Hello there everyone, welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now, find your cozy spot and relax. My name is David Youngblood, and I never believed in ghosts until that day in Pine Valley. It was a perfect morning in Yellowstone, the kind that makes you feel lucky to be alive. The valley stretched out before me, covered in wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. Snow-capped mountains stood tall in the distance, and a light mist hung over the meadow where a small herd of elk grazed peacefully. I breathed in the fresh mountain air as I walked through the valley, my boots crunching on the soft ground. Hot springs bubbled all around me, sending up clouds of steam that danced in the morning light. The thermal pools reflected the blue sky, making it look like pieces of heaven had fallen to earth. A grizzly bear was fishing in the stream nearby, completely unbothered by my presence. Above us, eagles soared through the clear sky. This was why I became a park ranger, to protect places like this, where nature still ruled. I was doing a routine wildlife survey, counting elk and noting their health. Just another day on the job, but even as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of peace that washed over me. Pine Valley was special, even by Yellowstone standards, remote, untouched, and breathtakingly beautiful. That's when everything changed. The temperature dropped, suddenly, like someone had opened a freezer door. I shivered and zipped up my jacket, confused by the sudden chill. Then I noticed something strange. The hot springs had stopped steaming. I walked over to the nearest pool and held my hand over it. Cold. The thermal activity had completely stopped. A silence fell over the valley, not the peaceful quiet of nature, but a dead silence that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I looked around and realized that every animal had frozen in place. The elk stood like statues in the meadow. The bear was motionless by the stream, a fish half caught in its paws. Even the birds hung unnaturally still in the sky. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and wrong in the unnatural quiet. That's when my radio crackled to life. Instead of the usual park frequency, it began playing what sounded like funeral songs in a Native American language. The mournful voices raised goosebumps on my arms, because I recognized bits of Shoshone, my people's language, mixed with others I didn't know. I looked up at the sky, and my heart skipped a beat. Dark storm clouds were gathering overhead, swirling together faster than any natural weather system. Within minutes, the bright morning sun was completely blocked, and the valley fell into an eerie twilight. At my feet, I noticed the wildflowers beginning to wilt. They were dying in perfect circles that spread outward from the central thermal pool. The vibrant colors faded to brown before my eyes, like someone had pressed fast forward on the seasons. A drop of something wet hit my hand. I looked up, thinking it had started to rain, but the sky was still dry. The drop was red. I followed its source to the nearby pine trees and felt my blood run cold. Ancient Shoshone burial markers, carved into the tree trunks generations ago, were oozing red sap like blood from a wound. The sap dripped steadily onto the frozen ground, each drop landing with a sound that seemed too loud in the silence. My grandfather had told me stories about these markers, about how they protected sacred places where our ancestors lay, but he never mentioned anything like this. As the red sap pooled at the base of the trees, I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't alone in Pine Valley anymore. Something had awakened here, something old and powerful that had been sleeping beneath the thermal pools and flowered meadows. Something that was now very much awake, and it knew I was here. I should probably tell you a bit about myself. I'm not just any park ranger. I'm Shoshone, born and raised on the reservation not far from here. My people have lived on these lands for thousands of years, long before it became a national park. When I was younger, I never thought I'd end up working for the Park Service, but after what happened to my brother Michael, everything changed. It was 7 years ago. Michael was just 22, full of life and dreams. We were driving home from a family gathering when a tourist's car swerved into our lane. The driver had been drinking after a day of sightseeing in the park. Michael didn't make it. I touched the eagle feathers in my braids, feeling their soft edges between my fingers. I earned these during my vision quest after Michael died. 3 days alone on the mountain, no food or water, just me and my grief and the spirits. When the eagle came to me in my vision, I knew what I had to do. I'll protect the sacred lands, I whispered to the cold air around me. For Michael, for my ancestors, I started carrying two things with me every day after that. First, all my scientific gear, the radio, GPS, specimen bags, and field journals. Second, the medicine wheel my grandfather gave me, small enough to fit in my pocket but powerful in its protection. My wife Rebecca always smiles when she sees me checking both before heading out. Modern man, ancient soul, she calls me. Our little boy is just 3 months old. We named him Michael. The thought of them waiting for me at home makes my heart race. I need to get out of this valley. I pull out my radio again, hoping the strange funeral songs have stopped. They haven't. If anything, they've grown louder, more voices joining the mournful chorus. This is Ranger Youngblood, I say into the radio. Pine Valley Survey. Does anyone copy? Nothing but more singing. Maybe it's just a weird glitch, I tell myself. The park's radio system is old, and we're in a remote area, but deep down, I know better. My grandfather would say the spirits are trying to tell me something. For weeks now, I've been having the same nightmare. Women in white buckskin dresses standing in a misty valley, weeping and calling Michael's name. At first I thought that were calling for my brother. Now I wonder if they meant my son. A sharp cold wind cuts through my jacket, and I pull it tighter around me. The dark clouds overhead are getting thicker. I need to find shelter before whatever storm is brewing hits. But there's something else bothering me. This valley feels different, not just because of the frozen animals and the dying flowers. There's a heaviness in the air, like the whole place is drowning in sadness. Growing up, I learned 2 ways of seeing the world. The Shoshone way taught me that everything has a spirit. The rocks, the trees, the water. The scientific way taught me to observe, measure, and record. Right now, both parts of me are screaming that something is very wrong. I check my compass. The needle spins wildly, refusing to point north. My GPS is no better, showing coordinates that keep changing. I'm caught between 2 worlds, just like always. My job is to document the elk population, take water samples, and head back to file my report. But my spiritual responsibility is to respect what's happening here, to listen to what the land is trying to tell me. The guilt I've carried since Michael's death weighs heavy on my shoulders. If I had remembered the protection prayers that morning, would the drunk driver have taken a different road? If I had been more connected to the old ways, could I have saved him? I can't make the same mistake again. Whatever is happening in Pine Valley, I need to face it with both my scientific mind and my Shoshone heart. The sound of breaking twigs makes me turn around. For a moment, I think the animals have started moving again. They haven't, but something else has. I walk toward the center of the valley, where the largest thermal pool sits. From a distance, something looks off about it. There's a structure around it that wasn't there before. As I get closer, my steps slow down. My mouth goes dry. Around the thermal pool is a circle made of elk bones. Not just scattered bones, but carefully arranged ones. Skulls, ribs, and leg bones form a perfect ring around the water. Between the bones are small items that catch the dim light. Shiny things. I kneel down for a better look. Hair braids wrapped with colorful beads, silver and turquoise jewelry. Modern things mixed with traditional items. Someone made this, and recently too. The ground around it doesn't show signs of animals or weather disturbing it, but who could have done this? I've been the only person in this section of the park for days. Standing up, I notice something in the meadow that makes my blood run cold. Wooden poles stick up from the ground where nothing stood before. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens of them spread across the field. I know what they are without getting closer. Burial poles, traditional Shoshone markers for graves. This isn't possible, I whisper. I force myself to walk to the nearest pole. It's carved with symbols I recognize from old stories, spirit animals, and protection signs. The dirt around it is freshly disturbed, as if the ground had been dug up and filled in again recently. But that's impossible. I was just in this meadow an hour ago, and it was untouched. Near one of the thermal pools, something catches my eye. Footprints in the mud. I bend down to examine them. They're moccasin prints, not modern shoes. The distinctive pattern shows they're made in the old style, the kind my great-grandmother might have worn a century ago. I stand up, and a strong smell hits me. Sweet sage and sweetgrass, mixed with something else, something rotten underneath. It's the smell of traditional burial rituals, the herbs we burn to help spirits find their way. But there's that decay smell too, out of place and disturbing. Looking around more, I spot something that doesn't belong in this remote valley. Modern, camping equipment. A bright blue backpack leans against one of the burial poles. Next to another is a pair of hiking boots, neatly arranged, as if left as an offering. A water bottle, a camera, a jacket, all placed carefully around different poles. These are the kinds of things hikers carry, but there aren't any hikers out here. This area has been closed to the public for the wildlife survey. I pull out my thermometer to check the air temperature. The digital display flashes random numbers, -120 degrees, then -40, then 75, then 0. When I dip a pH strip into one of the pools, it changes to a color I've never seen before, one that's not even on the chart. None of my instruments are working right. It's like the normal rules don't apply here anymore. Then I hear it singing, beautiful but heartbreaking voices carried on the wind. Women's voices singing in Shoshone, the mourning songs for the dead that I've only heard at funerals. The songs tell of loss, of children taken too soon, of mothers with empty arms. I spin around, trying to find the source, but the singing seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Hello, I call out again. Is anyone there? Moving toward a stand of ancient pine trees, I notice something carved into the bark of the largest one. Fresh cuts, the sap still wet. My heart pounds as I read what's written there. David Youngblood, born. April 17th, 1987, my name, my birthday carved like a memorial. I step back, bumping into something. When I turn around, there's nothing there. The ground beneath my feet suddenly feels wrong. I look down and see the earth sinking in spots, like something is pushing up. From below, in one sunken area, I can see what looks like old bones peeking through the thin layer of soil. Not animal bones, human ones, small ones. The mist that's been hovering over the valley starts to change. Instead of formless clouds, it begins to take shape. Women in traditional Shoshone dress, their forms transparent but unmistakable. They point deeper into the valley, toward the area with the most thermal activity. They want me to follow them. Part of me screams to run, to get out of this valley and back to Rebecca and baby Michael. But the other part, the part that remembers my grandfather's teachings, knows I can't outrun this. Whatever has awakened here has found me for a reason. With shaking hands, I touch the medicine wheel in my pocket and start walking in the direction the mist women are pointing. That's when I see her. She stands by the largest thermal pool, taller than any woman I've ever seen. 7 feet at least, with long arms and fingers that seem to stretch too far. She wears a white buckskin dress decorated with intricate beadwork that catches what little light remains in the valley. Her face is beautiful but wrong somehow. It keeps changing, shifting between deep sadness and terrible anger. And her eyes, they weep tears of blood that run down her cheeks in steady streams. Around her feet are children, dozens of them, boys and girls of different ages. Like her, they're not quite solid. I can see the landscape through their bodies. Ghost children, each one watching me with solemn eyes. Who are you? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. She doesn't speak. Instead, her hands move in the traditional sign language of my people. I understand some of it from what my grandfather taught me. Mother ... children ... lost. As her hands move, images flash in my mind. I see soldiers on horseback surrounding a Shoshone camp. I see children sick with smallpox, their bodies covered in sores. I see families forced from their homes, marching through winter snow. These aren't just random visions. They're memories of what happened to my people, to the Shoshone and other tribes. The history that doesn't make it into most textbooks. You're showing me the past, I say. She nods slowly, her face settling into deep sadness. Then her hands move again. Youngblood, family, for generations. Mother's side, she knows who I am. Not just my name, but my family history. She even signs the name of my mother's mother, who died before I was born. A cold wind whips through the valley, but it only affects me. The ghost children's hair doesn't move. The woman's dress stays perfectly still. Suddenly, the ground shakes. A nearby thermal pool erupts, sending boiling water high into the air. Steam rises, thick and sulphurous, making it hard to breathe. The woman, the mourning mother, my mind names her, hasn't moved, but somehow I know she caused this. Another pool erupts, and another. Soon I'm surrounded by geysers and steam vents that weren't active before. The air fills with the rotten egg, the smell of hydrogen sulfide gas. My eyes water and my lungs burn. She's trapping me here. One of the ghost children steps forward, a boy about 10 years old, wearing clothes from the 1800s. I died of fever, he says, his voice sounding both young and ancient at the same time. They took us from our homes in winter. Many of us got sick. They buried us here without our spirit names. Another child steps forward, a girl with long braids. Soldiers came to our camp. They said we were going to a better place. My mother tried to hide me, but they found us. I died on the long walk. One by one, the children tell their stories: disease, starvation, violence. Their voices blend together until it feels like their words are inside my head, pressing against my skull. I try to back away, to find a path out of the valley, but every route is blocked. A landslide covers the trail I came in on. New geysers block other paths. Even the sky seems sealed off. The dark clouds now a solid ceiling above. The morning, Mother's face shifts to anger, her bloody tears falling faster now. She raises her long arms and the wind picks up, howling through the valley with unnatural force. I feel something else too, a weight of sadness so heavy it makes my knees buckle. Her grief is flowing into me, and with it comes guilt, so much guilt. The grief of generations, the pain of lost children, the rage of a people whose sacred places were taken. I realize she's not just showing me these things, she's feeding on my reaction to them. Each wave of guilt and horror I feel makes her grow more solid, more powerful. The ghost children form a circle around me. Their transparent hands joined, they begin to sing the same morning songs I heard on my radio earlier. Through the steam and the singing, the morning mother's hands move again. Stay, remember, protect. She wants me to join them. I realize with horror, to become part of this eternal mourning, to add my grief to theirs. I back away until I hit something solid. Turning, I find myself face to face with a burial pole that wasn't there seconds ago. My name is carved into it, fresh and new. The morning, Mother steps closer, reaching out one impossibly long hand toward my face. Her bloody tears drop onto the ground between us, and then she speaks, her voice like stones grinding. Together, grandson of my daughter's daughter's daughter, the time has come for you to know the truth. The truth, I ask, my voice shaking. What truth? The mourning mother gestures to the ground beneath our feet. The soil continues to sink and shift, revealing more and more bones. Small bones, children's bones. This valley, she says in that terrible grinding voice. What do you see? I look around at the burial poles, the bones, the ghost children. Understanding hits me like a physical blow. It's a graveyard, I whisper. She nods slowly. A place where our children were buried after the soldiers came. After the diseases, after they took us from our homes. No markers were left, no ceremonies performed. Just shallow graves and forgotten names. The ghost children moved closer, their sad eyes fixed on me. But what does this have to do with me? I ask. The mourning mother's face shifts again, and, for a moment, I see something familiar in her features. Something I've seen in old family photographs. I am Hannah Youngblood, she says. Your great-great-grandmother. My legs nearly give out. Hannah Youngblood is a legend in my family. She died protecting a group of children during a cavalry attack in the 1870s. You're my ancestor. I am. Her bloody tears continued to fall. I died here, in this valley, trying to hide our children from those who would harm them. I have watched over them since, but it is not enough. Their spirits cannot rest while this sacred ground remains unmarked, unprotected, unknown. I understand, now, what she wants, why she called me here. You want me to stay, I say, to become a guardian spirit like you. She nods. Join us. Help us keep vigil. Protect what remains of our children. Part of me feels the pull of this request, the duty to my ancestors, to my people, but another part rebels against it. I have a son, I tell her, a wife. They need me alive, not as a spirit. The mourning mother's face twists with rage. The ground shakes violently. Steam erupts from all the thermal pools at once. They needed me too. She roars, her voice no longer human. My children needed me, my husband, but I gave my life for our people. The ghost children begin to wail, their voices rising in a terrible chorus. The sound cuts through me like physical pain. I sink to my knees, overwhelmed by the weight of history, of obligation. How can I choose between my duty to the living and my responsibility to the dead? There must be another way, I say, forcing the words out through the pressure in my chest, a way to honor the dead without joining them. The storm in the mourning mother's face calms slightly. She watches me, waiting. I reach into my pocket and pull out the sacred tobacco I always carry. With shaking hands, I begin to perform the mourning ceremony my grandfather taught me. I sprinkle tobacco on the ground, moving in a circle, singing the ancient songs of my people. I hear you, I tell the ghost children. I see you. I know what happened here, and I will not let you be forgotten. To my surprise, the mourning mother joins my song, her terrible voice softening. The ghost children follow, their voices blending with ours, in the old words of mourning and remembrance. But it's not enough. I can feel it. The ceremony helps, but their pain runs too deep. Suddenly, the world around me shifts. The valley dissolves, and I'm no longer kneeling on the ground. I'm experiencing the death of a young boy, feeling his fever, his fear, his longing for his mother. Then I'm a girl, running from soldiers. Then another child, and another, and another. I live through each of their deaths. I feel their pain, their terror, their confusion. Dozens of lives, dozens of deaths, all pouring through me at once. When I come back to myself, I'm lying on the ground, tears streaming down my face. The mourning mother stands over me, her face now calm. Now you understand, she says. I nod, unable to speak through my tears. I do understand, in a way I never could have before. What can I do? I finally manage to ask, how can I help them rest? Promise, she says. Promise to make this place known, to ensure it is protected, to fight for recognition of what happened here. I promise, I say without hesitation. Words are wind, she responds. I need more than words. I understand what she's asking for. A sacrifice, something precious to seal my promise. I think of what I carry that has real value. My radio, my scientific equipment. No, those are just things. Then my hand touches something in my pocket, my wedding ring. I took it off earlier while collecting water samples and tucked it away for safekeeping. The gold band represents my future with Rebecca, our life together raising our son. It's the most precious thing I have with me. Slowly, I pull it out and hold it up. The dull gold catches what little light remains in the valley. This is my promise, I say, placing the ring on the ground before the mourning mother. I will dedicate my life to protecting this place, to making sure everyone knows what happened here. The mourning mother looks at the ring, then at me. For the first time, she smiles. It's a sad smile, but genuine. Grandson, she says, her voice gentler now. You have chosen wisely. She bends down and picks up the ring. When she straightens, the ghost children gather around her. One by one, they begin to fade, their forms becoming transparent, then disappearing entirely. We will be watching, the mourning mother says as she too begins to fade. Do not forget your promise. I won't. I vow, I'll make things right. As she disappears completely, my wedding ring falls to the ground with a soft clink. I pick it up and slip it back on my finger. The dark clouds overhead begin to break apart. The thermal pools return to their normal activity. Around me, the animals of the valley slowly come back to life, as if waking from a deep sleep. I stand there for a long time, looking at the ground where so many children lie buried and forgotten. Then I take out my GPS unit and carefully mark the coordinates. I pull out my notebook and write down everything I've seen, everything I've learned. This place will not remain unmarked any longer. I will make sure of it. My name is Thomas Hawthorne. I was a forest ranger at Olympic National Forest for 15 years. This is my story, one I've never told anyone before. I'm writing it down now because the doctors say I don't have much time left. My liver's finally given up after years of trying to drink away what I saw in those woods back in '63. Maybe someone will find this notebook after I'm gone and understand why I became the town drunk, why I kept warning folks to stay away from Whispering Pines. It was early October 1963. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. The sun was just coming up, turning the mist between those giant Douglas firs into something magical. Gold light filtered through the trees like we were in some kind of natural cathedral. You could hear elk calling in the distance and ravens talking to each other from the treetops. The whole forest was alive with sound. I was standing by my favorite stream, watching salmon fighting their way upstream. They were on their last journey home. The water was so clear you could count the pebbles at the bottom, and it bubbled over moss-covered rocks in a way that always calmed me down. At 41, I'd come to love this wilderness more than any place on earth. That morning, I took a deep breath of that crisp mountain air and thought about my dad. He used to bring me camping in these same woods when I was just a boy. He's been gone a long time now, but in moments like that, I could almost feel him standing beside me. That's when I first noticed something wasn't right. The forest went quiet, and I mean dead quiet. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of the stream seemed as loud. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. I spotted a strange clearing up ahead that I'd never seen before. Nothing grew there, just black, dead soil in a perfect circle. The healthy forest surrounded it completely, but inside that circle, it was like nothing could live. My radio started acting up too, crackling with static that almost sounded like whispers. I couldn't make out any words, but it didn't sound like English anyway. Then the fog rolled in. Now, I'd seen plenty of fog in my years as a ranger, but this was different. It came uphill, against the wind, moving like it had a mind of its own. It twisted and curled between the trees like smoke fingers reaching for something. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Frost started forming on my backpack and canteen, even though the sky above was clear. It must have dropped 20 degrees in just a few minutes. I decided to check out the petroglyphs on the cliff face nearby, ancient carvings made by Native Americans centuries ago. I'd seen them 100 times before, but that day they seemed different. When I looked straight at them, they were the same as always. But when I glanced at them from the corner of my eye, they seemed to shift and change, like they were trying to tell me something. That's when Rex, my Saint Bernard, started acting strange too. He's normally the bravest dog you'll ever meet, but that morning he wouldn't leave my side. Something had him spooked. I should have turned back right then. Should have radioed for backup, or just gone straight to my truck and driven away from those woods forever. But I didn't. And that's a mistake I've been paying for ever since. I guess I should tell you a bit about myself. Before I became a ranger, I was a soldier. Fought in Korea back in '51. It was the coldest winter I'd ever known, colder than any night in these mountains. My best friend Jimmy died there. I held him as he bled out in the snow. Sometimes I still wake up sweating, thinking I'm back there. After the war, I tried to live a normal life. Got married, had twin daughters, beautiful little girls, with their mother's eyes, but the nightmares never stopped. I'd wake up screaming, and my wife would look at me like I was a stranger. We tried to make it work, but after 5 years, she'd had enough. Can't blame her, really. I don't see my girls much anymore. Just birthday cards and Christmas visits. They're teenagers now, growing up without me. Another thing I failed at. The scar on my left cheek. Got that in Seoul when a shell exploded nearby. Almost died that day. The army doctors patched me up, but they couldn't fix what was broken inside. That morning in the forest, I touched a scar like I always do when I'm nervous. I also checked my dad's old World War I compass. I carry it everywhere, along with my grandfather's knife, the one with the bone handle. 3 generations of Hawthorns, all of us fighters in one way or another. Rex stayed close to me as we walked deeper into the woods. He's a good dog, saved dozens of lost hikers over the years. He can smell a person under 6 feet of snow. That day, though, he was acting strange, whining and pacing. He knew something was wrong before I did. The dreams had been getting worse too. For 3 weeks straight, I'd been seeing skeleton people dancing around fires in the woods. I'd wake up shaking, the images so real I could almost smell the smoke. I never told anyone about those dreams. They'd think I was crazy. I know these woods better than anyone. Been the senior ranger here for 15 years. Every trail, every cave, every stream, they're all mapped in my head. When hikers get lost, I'm the one they call. I always find them, no matter what. I never give up on a search. Never. I won't lie to you. I've been hitting the bottle pretty hard lately. Got a flask of whiskey in my jacket pocket right now. Just a sip now and then helps quiet the memories. Helps me forget about Jimmy dying. About my ex-wife's face when she left. About my daughters growing up without their dad. But that day felt different from the start. Rex knew it too. He kept looking around like he was seeing ghosts. Then suddenly, he just stopped dead in his tracks. His fur stood straight up, and he stared at an empty space between two big trees. I couldn't see anything there, but Rex was terrified. He started making this low, scared sound, not a growl, more like he was crying. In all our years together, I'd never heard him make that sound before. That's when I spotted the bones. They were hanging from tree branches like Christmas decorations. Deer skulls, elk antlers, smaller bones, all arranged in perfect circles and stars. Someone had hung them up with thin wire, positioning them just so. This wasn't kids playing in the woods or some hunter's trophies. This was ... art. Creepy, disturbing art. I took a step closer, and that's when I saw the footprints in the mud. They were human-shaped, but wrong. Too long and skinny, with what looked like claw marks at the toes. Whatever made those prints wasn't normal. Then the smell hit me, like something dead and rotting, mixed with rotten eggs. It was so strong, it made my eyes water and my stomach turn. I pulled my bandana over my nose, but it didn't help much. "Hello," I called out. "Forest Service. Anyone there?" Only silence answered me, but I could feel it. I wasn't alone in those woods anymore. I kept moving forward, though every part of me was screaming to turn back. About half a mile ahead, I found a campsite. It looked like the people had just stepped away for a minute. The coffee pot was still warm on a small camp stove. 2 sleeping bags were laid out neatly inside an open tent. Food sat on paper plates, half-eaten, but there was no one around. Not a single person. "Hello," I called again. "Anyone here?" Forest Service. Nothing but that unnatural silence. Even the wind seemed to have died down. I checked the coffee pot with the back of my hand. Still warm enough to tell me these people hadn't been gone long. Maybe 30 minutes, tops. I pulled out my compass too, get my bearings and radio for help. But the needle was spinning like crazy, round and round, never settling on north. I tried my GPS unit next. The screen showed coordinates that would put me somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. That was impossible. Something was very wrong here. I needed to get back to the ranger station and bring a search team. These campers could be in trouble. I whistled for Rex to follow me, and we started heading back the way we came. At least, I thought it was the way we came. Nothing looked right anymore. Trees I didn't recognize. Strange rock formations I'd never seen before. It was like being in a completely different forest. That's when I heard it. A weird, high-pitched music that sounded like someone was playing a flute made of hollow bones. The notes were all wrong, not like any song I'd ever heard. And the sounds seemed to come from everywhere at once, like the trees themselves were singing. Rex whined and pressed against my leg. I reached down to scratch his ear, trying to comfort him, but my hand was shaking. "It's okay, boy," I lied. "We'll be fine." The fog was getting thicker, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. It curled around the trees, creating tunnel-like paths that seemed to lead nowhere. I tried to find familiar landmarks, but everything had changed. I stumbled into a small clearing and stopped cold. The ground had been disturbed in several places. Fresh mounds of dirt that looked exactly like graves. My throat went dry. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I had to know. I knelt down and started digging at one of the mounds with my hands. The dirt came away easily, like it had just been placed there. About 2 feet down, I hit something hard. More bones. But these weren't arranged like the ones hanging in the trees. These were placed in circular patterns, almost like a picture. I could make out what looked like a stick figure of a man with antlers, or maybe a crown on his head. I sat back on my heels, wiping the dirt from my hands. That's when I noticed the fog had gotten even thicker. I could barely see Rex now, even though he was standing right next to me. "Come on, boy," I said, standing up. "Let's get out of here." But which way was out? I couldn't see the sun through the fog to orient myself. Every direction looked the same, just white mist and dark tree shapes. I picked what I thought was the right way and started walking. After about 20 minutes, I realized we were going in circles. I recognized that fallen log. We'd passed it twice already. The forest was playing tricks on me, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on itself. I took a swig from my flask, feeling the whiskey burn down my throat. It didn't help the fear, but at least my hand stopped shaking for a minute. That's when Rex froze again. His eyes were fixed on something in the fog that I couldn't see. A low growl rumbled in his chest. I squinted, trying to see what had spooked him. For just a second, I thought I saw something moving between the trees, something tall and thin, like a person, but not quite right. It was there and gone so fast, I couldn't be sure if I'd really seen it or if my eyes were playing tricks. "Who's there?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Show yourself." No answer, just that eerie silence, broken only by Rex's growling. I pulled out my flashlight, even though it was still daytime. The fog was so thick now it might as well have been night. The beam cut through the mist, but didn't show anything unusual, just trees and more fog. Then I heard a twig snap behind me. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing there, but when I turned back, I saw fresh footprints in the mud right in front of me. Those same strange, too long prints with claw marks at the toes. They hadn't been there a second ago. I was sure of it. Whatever was out there, it was watching me, following me, and it was getting closer. I grabbed Rex's collar and started moving faster through the fog. I didn't know where I was going, but staying put didn't feel like an option anymore. That's when I saw it again, just out of the corner of my eye. A tall, skinny shape slipping between the trees. When I turned to look directly at it, there was nothing there, but I could feel it watching me. "Who's there?" I shouted again, my voice echoing through the silent forest. "This is Ranger Hawthorne. Identify yourself." The answer came as a whisper that seemed to float on the air all around me. "Thomas SSS ... double quotes. It wasn't a human voice. It was dry and rattling, like dead leaves blowing across pavement. I pulled out my service revolver, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold it steady. "Show yourself," I demanded. The fog parted just enough for me to see it. I wished to God I hadn't. It stood at least 9 feet tall, its body so thin it looked like skin stretched over a skeleton. Its arms and legs were too long, hanging down like branches. On its head sat what looked like a crown made of small animal skulls. But its face, that's what still wakes me up screaming after all these years. Where eyes should have been, there were just empty sockets with tiny flames dancing inside them. Its mouth opened way too wide, showing yellow teeth that looked like old tombstones. Rex lunged forward, barking furiously. He's the bravest dog I've ever known, but what happened next still doesn't make sense. He jumped right at the thing, teeth bared, but went right through it like it was made of smoke. The creature just laughed, a horrible sound like bones breaking. I fired 2 shots from my revolver. The bullets passed right through it too, hitting a tree behind it with solid Then it spoke again, but this time the voice was inside my head. Thomas Hawthorne, still running from the ghosts of Korea. It knew my name. It knew about Korea. "What are you?" I managed to ask, my mouth dry with fear. It didn't answer. Instead, it seemed to melt into the fog, disappearing from sight. But then I heard another voice, my ex-wife's voice, coming from somewhere in the trees to my right. Tom, please help us. The girls are scared." My heart nearly stopped. It couldn't be her. She was hundreds of miles away with our daughters, but it sounded exactly like her. "Tom, please," came another voice, my daughter Linda's voice. "Daddy, we're lost. Daddy, where are you?" That was Susan, my other daughter. I knew it couldn't be them. I knew it was the thing in the woods, trying to trick me, but hearing their voices begging for help, ... It took everything I had not to run toward those voices. "You're not real," I said through gritted teeth. "You're not them." The voices stopped, but the trees around me seemed to move, branches reaching down like arms trying to grab me. New paths opened up where there hadn't been any before, while the way behind me closed off with thick brush that hadn't been there a minute ago. I was being herded, like cattle to slaughter. The air around me got even colder. My breath came out in white clouds, and frost patterns formed on my jacket. But these weren't random patterns, they were pictures. I could see scenes from Korea. Jimmy dying in the snow, his blood turning the white ground red. I could see my daughters crying as I drove away after my divorce. The thing was in my head somehow, pulling out my worst memories and throwing them back at me. "Stop it!" I shouted, pressing my hands against my temples. "Get out of my head." Rex whimpered and pressed against my leg. At least he was real. I could feel his warm fur, his solid weight against me. That kept me from completely losing my mind. I reached down to pat him, to reassure both of us, when I noticed something strange. The fog around us was moving in a specific direction now, like it was being pulled toward something. And in that direction, I could see flashes of white, more bones hanging from trees. It was trying to lead me somewhere, and I was running out of options. I checked my gun. 4 bullets left. I doubted they'd do any good against something bullets passed right through. but the weight of the revolver in my hand was comforting anyway. "Come on, Rex," I said. "Let's see where this thing wants to take us." I followed the path the fog seemed to be creating. What else could I do? Every other direction was blocked by thick brush or fallen trees that hadn't been there before. As we walked, I kept seeing that tall figure, sometimes ahead of me, sometimes to the sides. Sometimes I could swear it was right behind me. When I'd spin around, there would be nothing there, but I could feel its burning eyes watching me. The fog thinned a little, and I realized with horror that there were now bone decorations hanging from every tree around us. Skulls, rib cages, leg bones, all arranged in patterns that hurt my eyes to look at. They clicked together in the light breeze, making a sound like hundreds of tiny wind chimes. And ahead, in a small clearing, stood the thing that had been hunting me, waiting, its flaming eyes fixed on mine, its two wide mouths stretched in what might have been a smile. "Welcome, Thomas," it said, in that same bone-dry voice. "I've been waiting for you for a very long time." I stood frozen, staring at the monster. We were in what looked like an old Native American burial ground. Hundreds of bone decorations hung from the trees all around us, clicking together in the wind. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice shaking. The creature tilted its head, those flame-filled eye sockets burning brighter. "Don't you recognize me, Tommy?" it asked. The voice changed, becoming horribly familiar. It was Jimmy's voice, my buddy, who died in Korea. "No," I whispered. "You're not him." "But I am," the thing said, taking a step closer. "What was left of me, anyway, after you left me to die in the snow." "I didn't leave you," I said, the old guilt washing over me. "I tried to save you. I carried you for miles." "Not far enough," the thing hissed. "I died alone while you lived. Do you know what happens to a soul consumed by betrayal, Tommy? It changes, it feeds, it grows." The creature that had once been Jimmy spread its long arms, gesturing to all the bones around us. "I've been collecting for a long time, waiting for you to find your way here, to join my collection." Rex growled beside me, hackles raised. Before I could grab his collar, he lunged at the creature. This time, he didn't pass. Through it, his teeth found purchase on what should have been the thing's throat. The bone collector shrieked, a sound so high and terrible it made my ears ring. It clawed at Rex with those long, skeletal fingers. I noticed something then. Around Rex's neck was the collar with his tags that had been blessed at the local church last Easter. The old priest had blessed all the search and rescue animals, and those tags seemed to be hurting the creature where they touched it. But Rex was no match for something so powerful. The bone collector grabbed him and began tearing at him with those long, claw-like fingers. Rex yelped in pain, still fighting bravely. I had only one shot. I could use my remaining bullets on the creature, which probably wouldn't do anything. Or I could. The thought made me sick. But Rex was suffering, being torn apart before my eyes. I raised my gun, aimed carefully, and fired. Rex went limp instantly. A clean shot, the kindest thing I could do for my loyal friend. The bone collector dropped Rex's body and turned those burning eyes on me. It seemed confused by what I'd done. "You killed your own companion," it said, sounding almost impressed. "Perhaps you truly belong here with me." "No," I said, putting my gun away. There was only one bullet left, and I wasn't sure I'd need it. I put him out of his misery. That's what friends do. That's what I would have done for you in Korea if I'd had the chance. I pulled my grandfather's bone-handled knife from its sheath. It wasn't much against a 9-foot monster, but it was all I had left. "You're not Jimmy," I said, finding my courage. "Jimmy was brave and kind. He wouldn't become this ... thing. You're just using his memory, his face." The creature screeched, in rage, and lunged at me. I dodged between two massive trees, running deeper into the burial ground. It followed, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Bones flew at me from all directions, like they were thrown by invisible hands. I ducked and weaved, feeling them whistle past my head. One caught me in the shoulder, sharp enough to cut through my jacket and draw blood. As I ran, I noticed something. Every time the creature moved away from the center of the burial ground, it seemed to slow down a little. Away from all those bone totems, it wasn't as strong. I had an idea, a crazy, probably suicidal idea. I turned and ran straight back toward the monster, knife in hand. It was so surprised it actually hesitated. I used that moment to slash at the nearest bone decoration, cutting the cord that held it together. The bones clattered to the ground. The bone collector screamed again, a sound of pure rage, but I saw pain in those flaming eyes too. "That's it, isn't it?" I said, understanding now. "These bone arrangements, they're keeping you here. They're your strength." I started slashing at every bone decoration I could reach, sending them crashing to the forest floor. With each one that fell, the creature seemed to grow a little less solid, a little more like the smoke thing Rex had first tried to attack. "Stop," it roared, its voice no longer sounding like Jimmy. Now it was just that dry, rattling sound. "I will feast on your soul." It charged at me. I waited until the last second, then dove to the side. The creature's momentum carried it past me, crashing into a tree. I used that moment to cut down 3 more bone totems. The bone collector was shrinking now, its 9-foot frame reduced to maybe 7 feet. The flames in its eye sockets were dimmer too, but it was still far stronger than me, and I was getting tired. It came at me again, those long arms reaching. I backed up, not realizing how close I was to the edge of the cliff, until I felt empty air behind my heels. Below me was 100 foot, dropped to the rocky stream bed. The creature saw my predicament and made a sound that might have been laughter. "Nowhere left to run, Tommy," it said, advancing slowly now. "Your bones will make a fine centerpiece for my collection." I looked around desperately. There were no more bone totems within reach, just the cliff behind me and the monster in front. I thought about my daughters, about how I'd failed them as a father, about how I'd never see them grow up. And then I thought about Jimmy, the real Jimmy. He wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want his memory used to hurt people. I gripped my knife tighter and made my choice. When the bone collector reached for me, I didn't back away. I lunged forward, driving my shoulder into what passed for its chest. The momentum carried us both over the edge of the cliff. We fell, tumbling through empty air. The creature shrieked and clawed at me, but I held on tight. If I was going to die, I was taking this thing with me. The last thing I remember is the rush of air, the creature's burning eyes inches from my face, and then ... impact. I woke up 3 days later in the hospital. Somehow, I'd survived the fall. My ribs were broken, my right leg shattered, but I was alive. They found me at the bottom of Whispering Pines Gorge, half in the stream. There was no sign of any creature, just a pile of ash that washed away in the current. They also found Rex's body up on the burial ground. Everyone assumed he'd been killed by a bear or mountain lion. I told the other rangers what happened. They thought the fall had scrambled my brain. Maybe they were right. But I know what I saw. I know what hunted me in those woods. And sometimes, even now, I still hear those bone-dry whispers in my dreams. My name is Susan Mitchell, and I've been a ranger at Great Smoky Mountains National Park for nearly 5 years now. What I'm about to tell you happened in the spring of 1981, and I've never shared the full story with anyone until now. It was a perfect afternoon in April. The sun was shining through the ancient hemlock trees, creating this magical green glow all around me. You know that feeling when you walk into an old church? That's what these forests feel like, nature's own cathedral. The trees towered so high above me that I had to tilt my head all the way back just to see their tops. I remember everything about that day so clearly. The mountain stream nearby was bubbling and splashing over moss-covered rocks. Little warblers were singing their hearts out from the rhododendron bushes. Everything felt so alive and peaceful. Wild azaleas were blooming everywhere, explosions of pink and white flowers against the backdrop of misty blue mountain ridges that seemed to go on forever. On days like this, I felt so lucky to have this job, to be out here instead of stuck in some office. I was 29 then, out tracking some reported bear activity in a remote area we locals call Hemlock Hollow. Nothing unusual about the assignment. We get bear reports all the time. I took a deep breath of that clean mountain air and smiled to myself. Charlie, my old bloodhound, was trotting alongside me, nose to the ground as usual. That's when everything changed. It happened so suddenly that at first I thought my ears had popped. Every single bird stopped singing at the exact same moment. The forest went completely silent. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, which seemed to echo loudly in my ears. "Charlie," I whispered, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet. He looked up at me, ears perked forward, clearly as confused as I was. I noticed the leaves on a nearby hemlock tree starting to turn black. Not the slow changing of seasons, this was happening right before my eyes. Healthy green needles shriveled, blackened, and fell to the ground. Then another tree did the same, and another. My radio crackled to life with a burst of static that made me jump. Through the interference, I could hear what sounded like whispered conversations. The voices had that distinct old Appalachian accent, like my grandmother used to have, the kind you don't hear much anymore, except from the oldest mountain folks. "Hello, Bass, do you copy?" I said into the radio, but got nothing back except more whispers and static. A cold breeze suddenly hit my face, making me shiver. The temperature had dropped at least 15 degrees in seconds. I could see my breath. Now, little clouds forming in front of my face. Goosebumps rose on my arms despite my ranger jacket. That's when I saw the fog. It didn't make any sense. The ground was bone dry. So where was this fog coming from? It rose from the hollow below me, not like regular fog, but in twisting tendrils that seemed to reach up toward me. I swear it moved like it had a mind of its own. Charlie growled, low in his throat, the fur on his back standing straight up. I took a few steps back and bumped into an old hemlock tree. When I turned to steady myself, I noticed something carved into the bark called Cherokee symbols. My grandmother had taught me to recognize some of them. Warnings, mostly, about bad places and dark spirits. As I stared at the carvings, dark sap began to ooze out of them, thick and slow like blood. It dripped down the trunk, forming patterns on the forest floor that made my stomach turn. They weren't random, they looked like stick figures with elongated limbs and gaping mouths. "Come on, Charlie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's check out that hollow and get back to the station." I didn't know it then, but we were already too late to turn back. The hunger in Hemlock Hollow had awakened, and it had caught our scent. I wasn't always a park ranger. Growing up in these mountains shaped everything about me. My daddy was a moonshiner making illegal whiskey deep in the woods where nobody could find his still. We lived in a small cabin without much money, but we had the mountains, and that counted for something. My grandmother lived with us. She knew everything about these hills, which plants could heal you and which could kill you. She'd sit me on her knee and tell stories about the mountain devils that lived in certain hollows. "They ain't just stories, Susan," she'd say, her eyes serious. "Some things in these mountains are older than people, and they're hungry things. They remember." I used to believe her. As a kid, those stories kept me awake at night. But as I grew up, I pushed them aside as just old superstitions. I was too busy trying to be the first in my family to finish high school, then somehow get to college. And I did it. I studied hard, got scholarships, and made it out. But leaving came with a price, to guilt of moving forward while my family stayed behind in our struggling mountain town. When I got the ranger job 5 years ago, it felt right to come back, to use what I'd learned, to protect the place that made me. Charlie nudged my leg, bringing me back to the present. He was a gift from my grandmother before she passed. "This dog sees more than most people," she'd told me. Charlie was getting old now, grey around his muzzle, but he could still track scents that seemed impossible to follow. I reached down to pat his head. "What is it, boy?" I'm not a big person, barely 5'4", but years of hiking these mountains had made me tough. My hands were calloused from work, my face already showing lines from squinting in the sun. I gripped my grandmother's walking stick tighter. She'd carved it herself from hickory, polished smooth from years of use. I carried it alongside my modern Ranger gear, bridge between the old mountain ways and the new. The dreams had started 3 weeks ago. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, the image of gaunt figures with glowing eyes still fresh in my mind. They spoke to me in an old mountain dialect I barely understood, begging for food, always hungry, always wanting. I hadn't told anyone about the dreams. Who would I tell, and what would I say? That I was having nightmares about my grandmother's stories. But then the reports started coming in. Hikers claimed their food was being stolen in the night. They described strange noises, not quite animal, not quite human. Some talked about seeing wild men moving through the trees at night. That's why I was out here today, to investigate, to prove to myself that there was a rational explanation. Maybe hungry bears, or even some homeless people camping illegally in the park. Charlie suddenly stopped walking and planted his feet firmly on the trail. His ears went back, and he made a sound I'd never heard before, halfway between a whine and a growl. "What's wrong, boy?" I crouched beside him, scanning the trees ahead. He backed up, trembling. Charlie had tracked bears, helped find lost hikers in thunderstorms, and once even stood his ground against a mountain lion. I'd never seen him afraid like this. It's okay, I said, though I didn't believe it myself. Show me what you smell. Charlie whimpered and tugged the other way, trying to lead me back the way we'd come. But I couldn't turn back not without checking out what was happening in that hollow. It was my job. Besides, mountain pride runs deep in my family. We don't back down from challenges. My daddy would have called it cowardice. Come on, I said firmly. We need to keep going. Charlie reluctantly followed, but he stayed close to my legs, his tail tucked low. The silence in the forest felt heavier now, pressing against my ears. The fog was getting thicker, wrapping around tree trunks like ghostly fingers. As we made our way deeper into Hemlock Hollow, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, and worse, that my grandmother's stories weren't just stories after all. The deeper we went into Hemlock Hollow, the more Charlie tried to pull away. He'd take a few steps forward, then back up whimpering. I'd never seen him act this way before. What is it, boy? I whispered, kneeling beside him. His nose pointed toward a thick patch of rhododendron, but he refused to go near it. I patted my leg. Stay close then. I pushed aside the rhododendron branches and froze. There, scattered on the ground, were bones. Lots of them. At first, I thought they were deer bones. We see those all the time. But these were different. Some were too long, too straight. I picked one up with shaking hands. It was a human femur, a thigh bone. I'd taken enough biology classes to know what I was looking at. The end had been gnawed, with deep teeth marks along the shaft. My stomach turned. This isn't right, I said to Charlie, dropping the bone. This isn't a bear. A few yards away, I found something even more disturbing, a crude shelter made from torn camping gear. A blue tarp had been stretched between trees, with sleeping bags and backpacks torn apart to make walls. What made my skin crawl were the symbols painted everywhere. They looked like the ones on the tree, but these were drawn in dark, rusty brown stains that looked horribly like dried blood. The smell hit me then so strong I had to cover my nose with my bandana. It was the worst thing I'd ever smelled, like something had died, mixed with unwashed bodies, and something sickly sweet I couldn't identify. Hello, I called out, my hand moving to the pepper spray on my belt. Park ranger. Is anyone here? Only silence answered me. I knelt down to examine the ground around the shelter. There were footprints in the soft dirt, but they didn't look right. They were human-shaped, but the toes were too long, with what looked like claw marks at the ends. The way the prints fell showed a strange walking pattern, like whoever wore whatever made them had something wrong with their legs. I pulled out my compass to mark my location on my map. The needle spun wildly, never settling on north. My GPS was just as useless according to it. I was standing in the middle of a lake that didn't exist. This doesn't make sense, I muttered. Charlie's head suddenly snapped up, his ears alert. I heard it too, a scratching sound, like fingernails dragging slowly down tree bark. Then another sound joined in from a different direction, and another. Soon the scratching surrounded us, coming from everywhere at once. I spotted a candy bar wrapper on the ground near the shelter. Picking it up, I saw it had been torn open and the chocolate inside completely devoured, wrapper and all. Next to it was an aluminum can of beans, gnawed open from the bottom, the contents eaten raw. Who would eat like this? I whispered. Looking up, I noticed deep claw marks on a nearby tree. They were at least 12 feet high, way too tall for a bear standing on its hind legs, and definitely not something a normal person could reach. I decided we'd seen enough. Come on, Charlie, let's get out of here and call for backup. We turned to head back the way we came, but nothing looked familiar. The path we'd followed into the hollow was gone, replaced by fallen trees and thick patches of thorny brambles that I knew hadn't been there before. This is the way we came in, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I know it is, but it wasn't. Somehow, the forest had changed around us, like it was trying to keep us there. I thought about my grandmother's stories, how certain places in the mountains could trap you if they wanted to. I took a deep breath. Okay, Charlie, we'll find another way out. We tried another direction, pushing through thick underbrush. The scratching sounds followed us, always just out of sight. The fog swirled around our feet, sometimes forming shapes that looked almost human before dissolving again. The sun was getting lower in the sky. In a few hours, it would be dark, and the thought of being in Hemlock Hollow after nightfall made my heart race. We needed to find a way out, and soon. That's when Charlie suddenly growled a deep, warning sound from his chest. He was staring fixedly at something ahead of us. I squinted through the trees and saw the dark opening of a cave I hadn't noticed before. The fog seemed to pour from its mouth like breath on a cold day. And then I saw movement. Something was coming out of the cave, something tall and impossibly thin that moved in a way nothing human should move. I grabbed Charlie's collar and pulled him behind a fallen log. We crouched there, hardly daring to breathe, as the thing from the cave emerged fully into the fading daylight. I'll never forget what stepped out of that cave. It looked like a man, but all wrong. He was so skinny that I could see every rib through his pale, almost see-through skin. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, with arms and legs, like sticks that seemed to long for his body. But it was his face that made my blood run cold. His eyes had a faint glow to them, like the way a cat's eyes shine in the dark. And his mouth, it opened way too wide when he sniffed the air, showing rows of teeth that had been filed to sharp points. They were stained black, like they'd been chewing on something that wasn't meant to be eaten. Charlie trembled against my leg, but thankfully stayed quiet. I held my breath, hoping the creature wouldn't spot us behind the fallen log. The thing I started thinking of it as the hollow man moved with a strange jerking motion, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes using his hands like an animal. He was wearing the tattered remains of what might have once been hiking clothes, now filthy and torn. He stopped and lifted his head, sniffing the air. Then he made a sound that still haunts my dreams, a mix of words and animal noises. Hungry, he groaned, his voice raspy like he hadn't used it properly in years. Smell you Phoebe. I realized with horror that he was actually talking while at the same time threatening to eat whatever he found. Me, he was threatening to eat me. The hollow man picked up a broken hiking pole near the cave entrance. With surprising cleverness, he used it to poke around in the bushes, checking for anything hiding there. This wasn't a mindless creature, he was using tools. Then he did something even more terrifying. He threw back his head and made a high-pitched whistling sound, followed by a series of clicks. He was calling others from different directions around the hollow. I heard answers, similar whistles and clicks. One by one, more creatures emerged from hiding places I hadn't even noticed, from another small cave, from behind a cluster of boulders, from up in the trees. They were all like the first ones, skinny, to the point of starvation, with glowing eyes and those terrible black teeth. More came this time. One of them said in that same broken speech, "Good eating, sweeter than the last." Another replied, running a long tongue over his teeth. I counted 7 of them now, moving with that same jerky gait, communicating with each other through those clicks and whistles. They were working together, spreading out to search the area. "We should skin this one slowly," said the first hollow man, his mouth stretching into something that might have been a smile. "Hear the screams before we feed." A smaller one, maybe once a woman, laughed, a horrible sound, like stones being ground together. "I want the eyes first." Still warm, I felt sick. They weren't just planning to kill and eat whoever they caught, they wanted to torture them first. One had to get out of there. Moving as slowly and quietly as I could, I started to back away, pulling Charlie with me. We made it about 10 feet before my boot snapped a twig. The sound seemed as loud as a gunshot in the quiet forest. All 7 heads snapped in our direction at once. "There!" shrieked the female one, pointing a long, bony finger. I ran. I didn't plan, just ran as fast as I could. Charlie right beside me. Behind us, I heard the creatures howl with excitement and start the chase. I crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping my face. I knew these mountains well, but the hollow men knew them better. Every time I thought I'd found a way out, one of them would appear ahead of me, cutting me off, forcing me to change direction. They were herding me, I realized with growing horror, herding me deeper into the hollow, away from any chance of escape. I scrambled up a steep slope, hoping the higher ground would give me some advantage. Charlie was struggling to keep up, his old legs not as quick as they once were. "Come on, boy," I urged him. From the top of the ridge, I could see that the hollow men had formed a loose circle around us, closing in slowly. They weren't rushing, they were enjoying the chase, savoring our fear. The first one, their leader, called out to me, "Know this place, Mitchell girl. Your blood belongs here." A chill ran through me. How did it know my name? "Your grandmama told you about us, didn't she?" The creature continued, taking a step closer. Old stories about the hungry winter. And suddenly, pieces started falling into place. The Hungry Winter was a local legend, a story about a wagon train that got lost in these mountains during a terrible blizzard about 150 years ago. The travelers were stranded for months. When rescuers finally reached them in spring, half the group was missing. The survivors claimed they'd wandered off looking for help. No one ever found them. But there were darker whispers about what really happened, stories about how some of the travelers turned to eating the dead, and then the living, to survive. The Hollow Man took another step toward me, close enough now that I could smell his rotten breath. "Your blood knows us," he said. "Your great-great-granddaddy was one of us. The first of us, the hungriest of us all." My heart seemed to stop. What was he saying? That my own ancestor was one of these things? "You're lying," I said, but my voice shook. The Hollow Man's mouth stretched into that horrible knot smile again. "Mitchell blood. We can smell it. You belong with us, not with them." I remembered the old family stories, the ones the adults would only whisper about when they thought I couldn't hear. How my mother's great-great-grandfather had been part of a wagon train that got lost in these very mountains. How he was one of the few survivors, but came back changed. How he lived alone afterward, and was found dead under strange circumstances. "The hunger never leaves," the creature continued, taking another step closer. "It just sleeps, but it always wakes up." The circle of hollow men was tightening around us. Charlie pressed against my leg, growling despite his fear. "You'll join us," the leader said. "Family reunion. Long overdue." I gripped my grandmother's walking stick tighter, feeling the smooth wood under my fingers. Grandma had carved symbols into IT protection symbols. She'd called them Cherokee prayers, mixed with old mountain magic. That's when something clicked. In my mind, the creek, there was a mountain stream that ran through part of the hollow. In my grandmother's stories, evil things couldn't cross running water, especially water that had been blessed. I just needed to reach it. But the hollow men were between me and where I thought the stream would be. I needed a distraction. Before I could think of a plan, Charlie made the decision for me. With a deep bark that I'd never heard from him before, he lunged at the leader of the hollow men, teeth bared. "Charlie, no!" I screamed, but it was too late. My brave old dog slammed into the creature's legs, knocking it off balance. The other hollow men shrieked in surprise. "Run!" I could have sworn I heard Charlie's voice. In my head, though I know that's impossible, I ran. Tears blinded me as I heard Charlie's growls turn to yelps of pain behind me. My faithful friend was giving his life so I could escape. I crashed down the other side of the ridge, heading toward where I thought the stream would be. The forest seemed to fight me every step of the way. Branches grabbed at my clothes. Roots rose up to trip me. The ground itself seemed to shift beneath my feet. Behind me, I heard the hollow men recovering from the surprise and giving chase again. Their whistles and clicks echoed through the trees. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But I kept running, fueled by fear and grief and rage. Then I heard a blessed sound of running water. The stream was just ahead. I burst through a thicket of rhododendron and saw it, a mountain stream about 10 feet wide, splashing over rocks on its way down the mountain. On the other side was a steep cliff leading up to a small waterfall. I splashed into the cold water, feeling a strange tingle as I crossed the halfway point. Looking back, I saw the hollow men emerge from the trees. They stopped at the water's edge, hissing and spitting like angry cats. They couldn't cross. Grandmother had been right, but my relief was short-lived. The leader approached the water cautiously. He dipped one long finger in and pulled it back, with a sizzling sound and a howl of pain. But then he tried again, gritting his teeth against the pain. He managed to put his whole hand in this time. "The old magics grow weak," he rasped. "We learn, we adapt. Soon water won't stop us." I realized with horror that he was right. Whatever power had once kept them confined to the hollow was fading. They were learning to overcome it. I remembered my grandmother's teaching. It wasn't just running water that stopped evil, it was blessed water. Water that had been prayed over with the old words. I waded to the middle of the stream, water swirling around my knees. The hollow men watched from the bank, their glowing eyes fixed on me. The leader was now up to his wrist in the water, grimacing in pain but still pushing forward. I raised my grandmother's walking stick. The carvings in the wood seemed to shimmer in the fading daylight. What were the words? I muttered to myself, trying to remember the prayer my grandmother had taught me. The leader of the hollow men was now knee-deep in the water, pushing through whatever pain it caused him. The others watched from the bank, some beginning to test the water with their toes. I closed my eyes, desperately trying to recall. And then, like a whisper in my ear, I heard my grandmother's voice, teaching me the old Cherokee blessing for water. I began to speak the words, my voice growing stronger with each phrase. I dipped the walking stick into the stream, moving it in the patterns my grandmother had shown me. The water around the stick began to glow with a soft blue light. The light spread outward, traveling up and down the stream. The Hollow Man leader screamed a terrible, inhuman sound as the glowing water touched him. He tried to back away but seemed frozen in place. "What have you done?" he shrieked. The blue light raced across the surface of the stream, growing brighter when it reached the banks. It didn't stop but continued into the soil on either side. The ground under the Hollow Men began to tremble. Cracks appeared, glowing with the same blue light. The creatures tried to flee, but the light followed them, spreading throughout the hollow like veins of glowing sapphire. "You've killed us," the leader wailed, still trapped in the stream. His body was smoking now, dissolving where the water touched it. "Your own blood." The other Hollow Men were being swallowed by the glowing cracks in the earth, their screams echoing through the hollow. Trees that had been corrupted by their presence began to heal, the black leaves falling away, to reveal healthy green ones beneath. The leader made one last desperate lunge toward me, his body half dissolved, but his teeth still sharp and black. His hand grabbed my ankle, and I felt those terrible teeth sink into my calf. I screamed in pain and fell backward into the stream. The current immediately swept the creature away, its body breaking apart in the blessed water, but the damage was done. I could feel it instantly, a burning sensation spreading from the bite, moving up my leg and toward my heart. The blue light was fading now. The hollow grew quiet once more. The Hollow Men were gone, trapped beneath the earth by whatever power the blessing had awakened. I dragged myself to the bank of the stream, my leg throbbing with pain. The bite wound was already turning an ugly purple color, with black veins spreading outward from it. I knew what it meant, the hunger, the leader's final revenge. I managed to climb out of the hollow that evening. The path that had disappeared earlier suddenly seemed clear again, as if the forest had decided to let me go. Or maybe it knew I was already carrying something worse than death inside me. The bite on my leg healed faster than any normal wound should. Within 3 days, there was nothing but a strange, pale scar shaped like a crescent moon, but I could feel the change beginning inside me. It started with dreams. Every night, I saw myself running through the forest on all fours, hunting. I would wake up with the taste of raw meat in my mouth, though I hadn't eaten anything. Then came the hunger, not normal hunger. This was different, deeper, darker. Food didn't satisfy it. I would eat until I was sick, but the emptiness remained, gnawing at me from the inside. I found myself staring at my co-workers' necks, watching the pulse of blood beneath their skin. The sound of heartbeats became so loud to me that I couldn't focus on conversations. I started wearing sunglasses indoors because bright light hurt my eyes. A week after the incident, I put in for a transfer to a different park. I told my supervisor it was because of Charlie that I couldn't bear to work in the same forest where I'd lost my dog. It wasn't a complete lie. I still cried every night thinking about how he had sacrificed himself for me. The Park Service sent me to a small outpost in Utah, remote desert location where I was mostly alone. That's what I needed. To be away from people, away from temptation. For the first year, I fought it. I tried everything: special diets, meditation, even briefly considering finding a priest for what would essentially be an exorcism. Nothing worked. The hunger only grew stronger. I started hunting at night. Just animals at first, rabbits, deer. I would eat them raw, tearing into their flesh with teeth that seemed to grow sharper with each passing month. It helped, but only temporarily. My body was changing too. I could climb trees with ease now, scaling straight up the trunks, using just my fingertips and toes. My skin grew paler, and no matter how much time I spent in the desert sun, I never tanned. I could see perfectly in the dark, and I was always cold, like my body couldn't generate heat properly anymore. I kept a journal of the changes, documenting my transformation with scientific detachment. Some part of me, the ranger, an educated woman who had escaped these mountains once before, wanted to understand what was happening to me. Maybe, I thought, if I understood it, I could fight it. But the hunger was winning. 2 years after Hemlock Hollow, I requested another transfer, this time to an even more remote location in Alaska. My supervisors were concerned I had lost weight. My appearance had changed dramatically, and I rarely spoke to anyone anymore. But my work was still excellent. I could track animals better than anyone in the service. My reports were detailed and precise, so they approved the transfer. In Alaska, surrounded by wilderness, I thought I might find peace. The long winter nights gave me freedom to hunt without fear of being seen. The isolation meant I didn't have to pretend to be normal around other people. But even there, miles from the nearest human, the hunger grew. Animals no longer satisfied it. I would find myself walking toward the nearest town, drawn by the scent of people, before forcing myself to turn back. I knew what would happen eventually. The same thing that happened to the wagon train survivors all those years ago. The same thing that had created the Hollow Men. I would give in to the hunger, and once I did, there would be no going back. So I made a decision. I packed my journal, along with a detailed map of Hemlock Hollow and everything I had learned about the Hollow Men. I sent it to the park headquarters in Tennessee with a note explaining that I had discovered important historical information about the park that needed to be preserved. Then I walked into the Alaskan wilderness. No supplies, no radio, no plan to return. That was 5 years ago. My name is Robert Schneider, but everyone calls me Bobby. I've been a forest ranger here in the Superior National Forest for almost 7 years now. It's the most beautiful place you could ever see. Tall white pines reaching up to the sky, paper, birch trees with their white bark, and so many lakes connected like a chain of mirrors. I love my job. Well, at least I did until that night in October 1965. I still remember how perfect that evening started. The lakes were so still they looked like glass, reflecting everything above them exactly. I could hear loons calling to each other across the water, that haunting cry that sounds almost like a wolf but isn't. A big moose was standing in the shallow part of the lake, eating plants from underwater. His antlers were huge. Everything looked like a perfect postcard of Minnesota wilderness. I was in my canoe, paddling quietly. This was just a normal patrol to check the boundaries of our forest. I'd done it 100 times before. The sun was setting, and I was thinking about my fiancée, Martha. She's a school teacher in town. We were planning to get married next spring. Then I noticed something odd in the sky. The northern lights were coming out, glowing green and gold. That wasn't normal at all. It was only early autumn, and we were too far south to see the aurora this time of year. But there it was, dancing across the stars. I was still watching the sky when everything changed. My compass went crazy, spinning around and around like it couldn't find north. The northern lights got brighter and brighter until I had to shield my eyes. It was like someone was turning up the brightness on a television set. Then the scariest thing happened. All the sounds just stopped. No loons calling, no water splashing against my canoe, no wind in the trees. Even when I dipped my paddle in the water, it made no sound at all. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the whole world. I tried my radio to call the ranger station, but all I got was this weird humming sound. It wasn't static. It was like musical tones, but not like any music I'd ever heard. It seemed to be coming from the sky itself. That's when I noticed that water, it was getting warm, really warm. In October in Minnesota, the lakes are usually freezing cold, but this water felt like a bathtub. Steam was rising off the surface in little spirals, like tiny tornadoes made of mist. I looked at the shoreline and got another shock. The trees were all swaying back and forth together, like they were dancing to music I couldn't hear. But there was no wind, not even a breeze. They moved like someone was pulling them with invisible strings. The last thing I noticed made my blood run cold. On the cliff faces along the shore, there are these old paintings made by the Ojibwe people hundreds of years ago. They're usually just red marks on the rock. But now they were glowing bright green, the same color as the aurora above, and they were pulsing, getting brighter and dimmer, all in perfect rhythm. I sat there in my canoe, floating in silent warm water, watching the trees sway and the ancient paintings glow. I knew something was very, very wrong, but I had no idea how wrong things were about to get. I reached into my pocket and touched my brother's Purple Heart medal. I always carry it with me. He died fighting in the Pacific during the war. Sometimes I think he's watching over me. That night, I really hoped he was. I guess I should tell you a bit more about myself. My dad came to America from Germany when he was just a kid. When the war with Germany started, A lot of people in our town looked at us funny, like maybe we weren't real Americans. That hurt my dad a lot. He loved this country. My older brother Frank joined the Navy as soon as he could. He wanted to show everyone that the Schneiders were as American as apple pie. Frank died in 1944 when his ship was attacked in the Pacific. They sent us his Purple Heart Medal. I was only 10 years old then. After that, I tried extra hard at everything. I wanted to make my parents proud, to make up for losing Frank. I'm not tall like he was. I'm kind of stocky with thick arms, from all the canoeing and hiking I do. My hair turned grey early, even though I'm only 31. Martha says it makes me look distinguished, but I think it just makes me look old. When I get nervous, I check my watch a lot. I can't help it. I like knowing exactly what time it is. It makes me feel like at least one thing is under control. I always have Frank's Purple Heart with me. I keep it in a little leather pouch along with my pocket knife, compass, and waterproof matches. Some people might think it's strange, but it feels like having a piece of him with me when I'm out in the woods. I've been engaged to Martha for about 6 months now. She teaches 3rd grade at the elementary school in town. We're saving up for a small house near the lake. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where we can raise a family. I love the idea of our kids growing up in this beautiful wilderness. The funny thing is, even before all this strange stuff started happening, I'd been having these weird dreams. Almost every night for months, I'd dream about lights in the sky watching me. In my dreams, I could feel eyes on me, like something intelligent was studying everything I did. I never told Martha about the dreams. I didn't want her to worry. I know these woods better than anyone. I've been paddling these lakes since I was a kid. I could tell you where every portage trail is, where the best fishing spots are, and which hidden lakes have the prettiest views. This is my place. I belong here, but there's something else you should know about me, something I'm not proud of. I've always been afraid. I'm not brave enough. Frank was the brave one. He died a hero. Me, I've never been tested like that. Sometimes I wonder what I would do if I had to face real danger. Would I run away? Or would I stand and fight like Frank did? I think that's why I push myself so hard, why I volunteer for the toughest assignments, why I was out on that lake by myself checking boundaries when most rangers would have waited until morning. I'm always trying to prove something to my boss, to Martha, to myself. That night on the lake, with the sky doing impossible things, and the world gone silent, I felt that old fear creeping up my spine. But I also felt something else, a chance to finally face something really scary. A chance to be brave like my brother. I checked my watch again, 8:43 p.m. The hands weren't moving. Time itself seemed to have stopped, and that's when I saw the first real sign that something truly impossible was happening. I paddled my canoe closer to shore, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when I spotted something that made me stop cold. There was a perfect circle on the ground where all the plants had died. It wasn't like a campfire spot or anything normal. This circle was about 20 feet across, and inside it was just bare dirt, with strange crystal-like stuff growing out of it. The crystals caught the green light from the sky and sparkled. I've seen plenty of strange things in the forest. Lightning strikes, disease patches, even places where chemicals spilled, but nothing like this. The edge of the circle was so perfect, it looked like someone had used a giant compass to draw it. As I stared at the circle, my canoe bumped into something. I nearly jumped out of my skin. But it was just a small fishing boat, empty, floating upright, with nobody in it. The fishing poles were still set up. I touched the metal tackle box and pulled my hand back in surprise. It was warm, like someone had just been holding it. There was even a thermos with coffee still steaming inside, but no fisherman. I called out, "Hello, anyone there?" My voice sounded flat in the strange silence. Getting more worried by the minute, I paddled to shore and pulled my canoe up on the beach. That's when I saw the tracks. Animal prints in the mud, deer tracks, raccoon tracks, even wolf tracks. But they all did the same weird thing. The tracks would go along normally, then suddenly turn into perfect round impressions, like the animals had been lifted straight up into the air. The air smelled like after a lightning storm, that sharp, clean smell people call ozone. But mixed with it was something else, a sweet, metallic taste that coated my tongue. I've never tasted anything like it before or since. I reached for my canoe paddle and noticed something else scary. All the metal parts of my canoe, the screws, the small brackets, even my metal water bottle were hot to the touch. Not just warm, but actually hot, like they'd been sitting in the sun all day. But the wooden parts felt normal. My compass wasn't just spinning anymore. Now the needle was pointing straight up toward the sky, like north was somewhere up in space. I'd never seen anything like it. That's when I first heard the humming. It started so quietly I almost didn't notice it. But soon it was getting louder, coming from everywhere at once. The sound went right through me, making my bones vibrate. It wasn't exactly painful, but it felt wrong, like my body knew this wasn't a sound humans were supposed to hear. I walked a little further along the shore and saw something that made no sense at all. Fish were floating belly up in the water, which usually means they're dead. But these fish weren't just randomly scattered. They were arranged in perfect patterns, circles, triangles, and shapes I don't even have names for. I picked one up to check if it was diseased or hurt, but it looked completely healthy except for being dead. The trees near the shore had strange burn marks spiraling up their trunks. The marks started wide at the bottom and got narrower as they went up, like something hot had come down from the sky and spun around the trees as it landed. I pulled out my camera to take pictures of all this. Nobody at the ranger station would believe me without proof. But when I opened it, all the film was completely white, like it had been exposed to bright light. That was impossible. The film was in a sealed container inside the camera. I checked my watch, again, still stuck at 8:43 p.m. I had no idea how much time had actually passed. That's when the humming sound suddenly got much louder. The water in the lake began to bubble and churn, like something huge was about to come up from below. I stood frozen on the shore, unable to run, unable to look away, and then I saw them. The water in the middle of the lake began to rise up in a dome shape. Then, something broke through the surface. It wasn't a fish or an animal. It was something I'd never seen before. A huge, round, disc-shaped, craft, machine. I don't know what to call it. It was metallic and smooth, about the size of 3 school buses put together. Water ran off its surface like it was made of something that water couldn't stick to, like mercury in those old thermometers. The craft hovered silently about 10 feet above the lake. No engine noise, no splash, nothing. Just that constant humming sound that I now realized was coming from this thing. I wanted to run. I wanted to jump in my canoe and paddle away as fast as I could, but I couldn't move. It wasn't fear that kept me still, though I was plenty scared. It was like my muscles wouldn't listen to my brain anymore. That's when I saw them step out of the craft. The Watchers. That's what I call them now, though I didn't have a name for them then. They were shaped like people, but wrong. Too tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet. Too thin, like someone had stretched a normal person until they were about to snap. Their heads were long, and their eyes were huge and black, reflecting the starlight like polished stones. They didn't have much of a nose or mouth that I could see. The strangest thing was how they moved. They didn't walk. They just glided, floating a few inches above the ground. 3 of them came toward me across the water, not making a single ripple on the surface. As they got closer, my head started to hurt bad, like the worst headache you can imagine, starting behind my eyes and spreading through my whole skull. Somehow I knew they were trying to talk to me, but not with words. They were putting thoughts directly into my brain, and my brain didn't know how to handle it. I still couldn't move as they circled around me. They didn't have any tools or weapons. That I could see, but they didn't need any. One of them looked right into my eyes, and my whole body went completely stiff. I couldn't even blink. They seemed curious about my equipment. One of them pointed at my backpack, and it unzipped by itself. My things floated out into the air. My map, my flashlight, my first aid kit. They looked at each item carefully, turning it around in the air without touching it. It was like they were learning about all of human technology just by looking at my camping gear. The pain in my head changed. Now, instead of just hurting, I was seeing pictures. I saw the Earth from space, blue and beautiful. I saw maps of stars I didn't recognize. I saw drawings of DNA and cells, and things I couldn't understand. One of them touched my metal water bottle, and I watched in shock as the metal seemed to melt and then reform into a small perfect sphere. Then it changed back into a water bottle again. They could change things just by thinking about it. The strangest part was that as I got more afraid, they seemed to get brighter, like they were somehow feeding on my fear. The glow around them intensified when my heart pounded harder. One of them noticed the small leather pouch at my belt. It floated away from me and opened in mid-air. Frank's purple heart medal drifted out, spinning slowly. All three of the beings froze, staring at the medal. Somehow, they understood what it meant. They knew it was important to me. They knew it was connected to death and sacrifice and war. I felt a wave of sadness come from them, followed by something like curiosity. No, it was deeper than that, like they were trying to understand why humans would fight and die for each other. That's when I decided to try to run. With all my strength, I broke free from whatever was holding me still. I turned and lunged for my canoe, hoping I could push off from shore before they stopped me. I got 2 steps before I felt myself lifting off the ground. My feet kicked uselessly in the air as I rose higher. My canoe lifted too, floating alongside me about 5 feet above the water. Some kind of invisible beam was pulling us both toward the hovering craft. I was trapped, suspended in mid-air, being drawn toward something beyond my understanding, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. As I floated toward their craft, a terrible understanding filled my mind. I wasn't just some random ranger who happened to be in the wrong place. They had chosen me specifically. They'd been watching our military, our weapons, our wars, and somehow they knew about my connection to all that through Frank's medal. The inside of their craft was brighter than the sun, but didn't hurt my eyes. There were no chairs or controls like you'd expect, just smooth walls that glowed and changed colors. I was gently placed on the floor, which felt slightly soft, like walking on firm jello. One of the watchers stood in front of me. In my head, I heard words that weren't spoken aloud. We have been watching since your people split the atom. We need to understand if humans are a threat to the stars. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't work. Instead, I thought my answer hard. We're not a threat to you. We're just trying to survive. The being tilted its head. Your kind makes weapons that can destroy worlds. Your brother died in war. You carry his honor with you always. They knew about Frank. They knew everything. We must know more. The voice in my head continued. You will help us understand. You will be studied, or you will be removed as a security risk. I understood the choice they were giving me. Either let them experiment on me, or be eliminated. Neither option sounded good. My heart was pounding, so hard I thought it might burst. I was more scared than I'd ever been in my life. But then I thought about Frank. What would he do in this situation? He wouldn't give up. He wouldn't let fear win. I won't help you, I thought back at them. And you don't have the right to decide if humans are a threat or not. We make mistakes. We fight wars, but we also create beautiful things. We love each other. We sacrifice for each other. That's what this medal means. The beings stared at me with those huge black eyes. I felt them trying to get into my mind deeper, to see my memories, my fears. I remembered something Frank once told me about resisting interrogation. Focus on one simple thing. So I pictured Martha's face. I held that image tight and wouldn't let it go. The watchers seemed frustrated. They couldn't break through. One of them moved toward me, reaching out with long, thin fingers. But I noticed something. My emergency radio beacon was still in my pocket, and the little light on it was blinking rapidly. The alien's technology was making it malfunction, but it was still working in some way. I remembered my training about radio equipment. Strong electromagnetic pulses can disrupt electronics. Maybe ... just maybe. With all my courage, I lunged forward and grabbed my radio. I turned the volume and frequency knobs all the way up and pressed the emergency broadcast button. The effect was immediate and shocking. The watchers recoiled, their slim bodies shaking. The walls of the craft pulsed with red light. My head felt like it might split open from the screech that filled the air, but I held on to that radio for dear life. Your technology, I shouted over the noise. It doesn't like our radio waves, does it? I was right. Something about the emergency frequency was interfering with whatever powered their ship and their abilities. I had found their weakness. The watchers moved back, communicating rapidly with each other in ways I couldn't understand. The craft began to shake. Lights flickered. I felt the floor vibrate beneath my feet. One of the watchers reached for me again, but I held the radio toward it like a weapon. Stay back, I yelled. I spotted my canoe still floating near an opening in the craft. If I could just reach it, maybe I could escape. But could I really get away? And if I did, would they just follow me? Would they come after Martha, or my parents, or the whole town? In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting everyone. If these beings thought humans were a threat, what would stop them from doing something terrible? Listen to me, I said, looking directly at what seemed to be their leader. If you harm me or anyone else, others will come looking. They'll bring bigger radios, stronger signals, they'll find your weakness. I was bluffing, but I put every ounce of conviction I had into those words. The lead watcher stared at me for what felt like forever. Then, something unexpected happened. It extended a hand and Frank's purple heart floated back to me. In my mind, I heard courage, sacrifice, protection of others. These qualities, we understand now. You may go, but we will continue watching. The ship gave another violent shake. My radio was still disrupting their systems. They needed me gone as much as I needed to leave. I felt a sharp pain in the back of my head, like something had been inserted there. Before I could react, I was suddenly back in my canoe, floating on the lake. The craft rose silently into the night sky, the green aurora seeming to wrap around it. Then, in a flash of light that left spots in my vision, it was gone. I paddled back to shore as fast as I could, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the paddle. When I reached land, I collapsed on the beach, exhausted and terrified, but alive. My watch started ticking again. It read 3:17 a.m. Nearly 7 hours had passed. The next day, men in dark suits came to the ranger station. They said they were from the government and had detected an atmospheric disturbance in my area. They asked a lot of questions, took my radio, looked at the back of my head where I still felt a strange ache. They told me I was being transferred to a desk job in Minneapolis, said it was a promotion. I knew better. For years after, I had headaches and strange gaps in my memory. I wrote down everything I could remember about that night, hiding my notes, where the men in suits wouldn't find them. Sometimes I'd wake up feeling like I was being watched. Sometimes my compass would spin wildly for no reason. I married Martha, we had kids. I lived what looked like a normal life. But I kept researching, kept looking for others who had seen the Watchers. There were more of us than you'd think. Last year, I found something. Evidence that the government knows all about them, has known for decades. I was getting close to proving it when, well, that's another story. But remember this, they're still up there, still watching, and they're trying to decide if we deserve to keep existing. My advice, be kind, be brave, show them the best of what humans can be, because they're watching all of us, even now. My name is Margaret O'Brien, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 33 years old and work as a ranger here at Shadow Lake in Adirondack Park. This morning, as I paddle my canoe across the water, I can't help but feel a sense of peace washing over me for the first time in years. The lake is mirror smooth today, reflecting the autumn trees like a perfect painting. The sugar maples are on fire with red and gold colors, and the weather couldn't be more perfect, what the old-timers call Indian summer. Warm days, cool nights, and a gentle breeze that carries the scent of pine and fallen leaves. I dip my paddle into the water, making barely a ripple. The sound of loons calling across the lake makes me smile. Their haunting cries mix with the occasional slap of beaver tails in the distance. This is why I came back to the Adirondacks, to find the quiet that my soul has been missing. Morning mist rises from the water where warm air meets the cooler surface, creating ghostly curtains that dance and swirl around my canoe. It's like paddling through a dream. "Miss Maggie, look at that fish," calls Billy Kowalski from the front of the canoe. He's 12 years old, all skinny arms and legs, with a mop of brown hair that never stays combed. His dad works maintenance for the park, and I offered to take Billy fishing today, partly because he needed something to do, and partly because ... Well, I needed it too. "Good eye, Billy," I say, though I hadn't actually seen the fish. I've been a bit distracted lately. Billy reminds me too much of the children I tried to save back in Europe. After the war ended, I worked as a Red Cross nurse in the displaced persons camps. So many lost children, so many I couldn't help. Sometimes, I still see their faces when I close my eyes at night, reaching out to me, begging for help that never came. I adjust the waterproof pack behind my seat. Inside are basic medical supplies, my grandmother's rosary beads, and a photo of James. In his dress uniform, my fiancé never came back from D-Day. Sometimes I wonder what our life would have been like, the children we might have had. You're doing great with that paddle, Billy, I say, pushing those thoughts away. I'm good at hiding my feelings. No one at the ranger station knows about the nightmares or the whiskey bottle I keep hidden in my cabin to help me sleep. They see Ranger O'Brien, tall, capable, with prematurely grey hair that I joke makes me look distinguished. They see my laugh lines but don't notice they never reach my eyes anymore. I know every inch of this lake system, every hidden rock, every dangerous current. Water has always been my friend, until the dreams started. Dreams of children reaching up from dark water, their pale arms stretching toward me, while I stand frozen, unable to save them. Suddenly, everything goes quiet. The loons stop calling. The breeze dies. Even the gentle lapping of water against the canoe ceases. Billy notices it too. "Miss Maggie," he whispers, his voice sounding too loud in the silence. "Why is it so quiet?" Before I can answer, I spot something floating near the surface. A fish, belly up, then another, and another. Dead fish appearing all around us, but they don't look sick or injured. They just look empty. Their eye sockets are vacant, like something scooped out what was inside. I dip my hand into the water and pull it back quickly. "That's strange," I murmur. The water is ice cold now, despite the warm sunshine. Steam rises where the frigid water meets the warm air. Then I hear it, children's voices, singing a lullaby. The melody floats across the water, sweet and harmonic. But there's something wrong about it. The nearest children's camp is 20 miles away. "Do you hear that?" Billy asks, his eyes wide with wonder. I nod, unable to speak, as I look down into the crystal clear water. Shadows move beneath us, independent of our canoe or any visible objects. Dark shapes that seem to swim and play in the depths. That's when I notice the ancient pictographs on the cliff face across the lake. Drawings made by the Iroquois hundreds of years ago. Red pigment begins to seep from them, dripping down the rock face like tears of blood into the still water. "Billy," I say, keeping my voice steady despite the fear creeping up my spine. "I think we should head back to shore now." But something tells me it's already too late. "Miss Maggie, look, there are kids playing over there." Billy points excitedly toward the shore, his small finger jabbing at the air. I squint in the direction he's pointing. For a split second, I see them too small, figures splashing in the shallow water near the rocky beach. But when I blink and look again, they're gone. Nothing there but empty shoreline and still water. "I don't see anyone, Billy," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maybe it was just shadows from the trees." Billy frowns. "No, I saw them. They were waving at me." A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the suddenly cold water. I guide our canoe toward the shore anyway. Something's not right, and my ranger instincts tell me we need to investigate. As we get closer, I spot an overturned canoe on the rocky beach. It's still dripping wet, like someone just flipped it over, but there's no one around. 2 orange life jackets float nearby, empty and bobbing gently in the water. "Stay in the canoe, Billy," I say as I carefully step out into the shallow water and pull our boat onto the pebbly shore. The mud along the shoreline is covered in handprints, small ones, child-sized, but something about them makes my skin crawl. The fingers are too long, and they look webbed, like frogs' feet, rather than human hands. "Do you smell that?" Billy wrinkles his nose. I nod. The air is thick with the smell of pond scum and rotting plants, even though the water is crystal clear. It's the kind of smell you get from stagnant water in the height of summer, not a clean lake in autumn. Billy climbs out of the canoe despite my warning and walks a few steps ahead of me. "Miss Maggie, I found something." I hurry to catch up with him. He's standing over a small pile of children's things, a worn teddy bear, a lunchbox with a faded Superman logo, a small pair of shoes. I pick up the lunchbox. It looks like the kind they made in the 1940s, during the war. Next to it is a plastic toy truck that couldn't be more than a few years old, and a wooden doll that looks like it might be from the early 1900s. "These don't make sense together," I murmur, more to myself than to Billy. "They're from different times." I pull out my compass to get our bearings. We need to report the abandoned canoe to the ranger station. But when I look down at the compass, the needle is spinning wildly before stopping, pointing directly at the center of the lake. I turn in a circle, but no matter which way I face, the needle keeps pointing to the middle of Shadow Lake. I try my radio next. "Ranger Station 1, this is O'Brien. Do you copy over?" Nothing but static comes back, mixed with what sounds disturbingly like children giggling. Suddenly, The most beautiful singing rises from the direction of the lake. The voices are young and sweet, singing in harmony in languages I don't recognize. Then they switch to English, calling names one by one, like they're taking attendance at school. James ... Elizabeth ... Thomas ... William ... When they say William, Billy's head snaps up, his eyes wide. They know my name, he whispers. They're calling me. Before I can grab him, Billy turns and walks toward the water's edge like he's in a trance. His eyes have a strange glassy look to them, reflecting light that doesn't seem to be coming from the sun or sky. Billy, stop, I call, but he doesn't seem to hear me. As I lunge for his arm, I notice something else that turns my blood to ice. The water level is rising fast. The shoreline where we pulled up our canoe just minutes ago is now underwater, and the water is still climbing higher, creeping up the beach toward our feet. There's been no rain, no dam release upstream that could explain this. That's when I see them clearly for the first time, dark shapes moving under the water's surface. They're definitely child-sized, but they move too smoothly, too gracefully, and they stay underwater far too long without coming up for air. As one swims closer to shore where Billy stands, entranced, I can make out the shape more clearly, the outline of a child, but wrong somehow, too fluid, too at home in the depths. Billy. I grab his shoulder and spin him around, breaking whatever spell had taken hold of him. We need to leave, now. His eyes slowly focus on my face, confusion washing over him. But they want to play with me, Miss Maggie. They said they'd been waiting for me for a long time. The water continues to rise around our ankles, and I can feel eyes watching us from beneath the surface. Who's been waiting for you, Billy? I ask, though I'm terrified to hear the answer. His reply sends ice through my veins. The children who live in the lake. They say once you join them, you never have to be alone again. I grab Billy's hand and pull him back from the water's edge. The singing grows louder, more insistent. My heart pounds in my chest as the water continues to rise around our ankles. Then they emerge. One by one, they rise from the lake. Children of all ages, from tiny toddlers to teenagers. At first glance, they look like normal kids who might be swimming on a summer day. They wear clothes from different times. A boy in overalls, like from the Depression era. A girl in a dress that looks like it's from the 1800s. Others in more modern clothes. But as they come closer, I can see what's wrong with them. Their skin is too pale, almost blue. Water streams constantly from their hair and clothes, though they don't seem wet exactly. And their eyes where eyes should be. There are only dark, empty sockets with lake water seeping out like tears. Despite this, they're smiling. Their voices are sweet and clear, like wind chimes made of ice. Hello, Margaret, they say together, their voices blending in perfect harmony. We've been waiting for you. My blood freezes. How do you know my name? I manage to ask, keeping a tight grip on Billy's hand. A little girl no more than 6 years old steps forward. Her blonde hair might have been pretty once, but now it's tangled. With lake weeds, we know all about you. Maggie O'Brien, she says. We know about James who died on the beach in France. We know about the children you couldn't save in Europe. I feel sick. How could they possibly know these things? Another child, a boy about Billy's age, speaks next. You try so hard to save everyone, don't you, Maggie? But you can't. Some of us are meant to be lost. The water is up to our knees now. Behind us, I see that our canoe has been carried away by the rising water. I look around desperately for an escape route, but we're surrounded on 3 sides by deep water, and the shore behind us is rapidly disappearing. What do you want? I ask, trying to keep my voice from shaking. We just want to play. They answer in unison, their voices echoing across the water. We've been alone for so long. Billy would make a perfect friend. Billy's grip on my hand loosens. I look down to see his eyes taking on that glassy look again. They understand me, Miss Maggie, he whispers. They say I won't ever have to feel sad or lonely again. Billy, don't listen to them, I plead. The children begin to move in a circle around us, creating a whirlpool that makes the water churn and splash. Despite the chaos, none of them break their perfect smiles. You can join us too, Maggie, says a small boy with dark hair. As I watch in horror, his face shifts and changes until he looks exactly like one of the children from the camps in Europe. A little Polish boy named Stefan, who died of pneumonia despite everything I tried to do. Remember me, Nurse O'Brien, he asks in Stefan's voice. You held my hand until the end. You can hold it forever now. More of their faces change, becoming children I recognize, all ones I couldn't save. Their arms reach out toward me, beseeching. Stop it, I cry out, tears streaming down my face. You're not them. We can be anyone you've lost, they reply. Everyone you failed to save can be with you again. A sudden violent wave knocks us both off our feet. I manage to keep hold of Billy's hand as we're submerged for a moment before I pull us both up, sputtering and gasping. The lake has completely transformed. The water flows in impossible ways, upward in columns, spinning in tight funnels. The sky above has darkened, though I don't remember seeing any clouds roll in. Stars are visible despite it being daytime, twinkling in a purple black sky. Billy's eyes are fully entranced now. He pulls away from me with surprising strength and walks deeper into the water. Billy, no, I scream, but he doesn't hear me. The children part to let him through. Their faces are light with terrible joy. Billy is chest deep now, moving steadily toward the center of their circle. I wade after him, fighting against water that feels thick, almost like syrup. It burns against my skin where my shirt has ridden up. As I get closer to the circle of children, I see their true forms flicker in and out of view. One moment they look like innocent kids. The next, they're skeletal figures with lakeweed for hair and small crayfish scuttling in and out of their empty eye sockets. You can't have him, I shout, reaching for Billy. The children turn to me as one, their sweet faces now twisted with rage. He wants to come with us, they hiss, no longer sounding like children at all. He will be our friend forever. Billy turns to look at me one last time, water up to his shoulders now. There's a peaceful smile on his face that breaks my heart. It's okay, Miss Maggie, he says softly. They say I'll never be alone. They say I'll be happy. Billy, they're lying. I beg. Please, come back to me. The water between us begins to churn and boil. The children's singing grows to a deafening pitch. I realize with horror that I'm running out of time. Wait, I cry out, forcing my way through the thick water toward Billy. Tell me who you are first. Why are you here in this lake? The children go still. The one who looks like a girl from the 1800s floats forward. We are the forgotten, she says, her voice soft but carrying across the water. 200 years ago, when settlers came to these mountains, many Native American children were drowned in this lake during the fighting. No one remembers us, adds a boy in old-fashioned clothes. No one mourned us, so we stayed. And now we collect friends to play with us forever. Billy is perfect, says another child. He's lonely like we were, scared like we were. Billy nods slowly, the water now reaching his chin. My mum died last year, he says, as if just remembering it. Dad works all the time. Nobody really sees me. My heart breaks for him. I had no idea he was carrying so much pain. I see you, Billy, I say, my voice cracking. Your dad sees you. He loves you so much. I push forward against the water that now feels like quicksand. The children hiss and create waves to push me back, but I keep fighting. You can't have him, I tell them. He has a life to live. Then we'll take you instead, says the girl from the 1800s. One adult soul is worth many children's souls. Your pain and guilt are delicious to us. I pours the water up to my chest now. If I come with you, will you let Billy go? Will you release all the children you've taken? The drowned children look at each other, seeming to communicate without words. Finally, they nod in unison. A willing sacrifice. They whisper, yes, we accept. Miss Maggie, no. Billy suddenly snaps out of his trance, his eyes clearing as he realizes what I'm offering. It's okay, Billy, I say with a sad smile. I'm good at swimming. I take a deep breath and dive beneath the surface. The underwater world is even stranger than above. Ghostly structures that look like playgrounds and schoolhouses made of bones and driftwood. The lake bottom, hundreds of children swim through them, playing games of tag and hide-and-seek that have gone on for centuries. Skeletal hands reach for me, pulling me deeper. The pressure builds in my lungs, but I don't fight it. If my life can save Billy and free these lost souls, then perhaps I can finally atone for all those I couldn't save before. As water fills my lungs, a strange peace comes over me. Images flash before my eyes. James in his uniform, the children from the camps, my parents back in Ireland. I'm going to see them all soon. Then something unexpected happens. A small hand grabs mine, pulling upward with surprising strength. It's Billy. He's swimming down toward me, his face determined despite the pain as he holds his breath. Our eyes meet underwater. In that moment, something passes between us, a connection, a love so pure and strong that it cuts through the spell of the lake children. Their screams vibrate through the water as they realize what's happening. The bond between Billy and me, between the living, is breaking their hold. The children swirl around us in a furious tornado, trying to separate us, but Billy holds on tight, with strength I didn't know he had. Billy pulls me upward. The drowned children claw at my legs, my clothes, my hair, trying to keep me in their realm, but Billy won't let go. We break the surface together, gasping for air. The lake around us is going crazy, water shooting up in geysers, whirlpools forming and dissolving. The sky is split between normal daylight and that strange starry darkness. Swim, I choke out, spitting up lake water. We thrash toward shore, the angry shrieks of the children following us. I feel cold hands grabbing at my ankles, but I kick free and keep going. Billy reaches the shore first and turns to help pull me out of the water. As soon as we're both on solid ground, the lake goes completely still. The unnatural darkness recedes. Birds start singing again as if nothing happened. But we know different. We collapse on the rocky beach, soaking wet and shaking. "You saved me," I whispered to Billy. He shakes his head. "You saved me first." We somehow make it back to the ranger station. I tell a story about our canoe capsizing, and no one questions it. Why would they? The truth is too impossible to believe. But things are different after Shadow Lake. Billy doesn't speak anymore. Not to his father, not to his teachers, not to anyone. The only way he communicates is through drawings, page after page of underwater children with hollow eyes and reaching hands. As for me, something in my lungs never healed right. The doctors call it chronic pneumonia, but I know it's really lake water that never fully left my body. I cough constantly, especially at night, bringing up water that smells of pond scum and decay. I don't have much time left, the doctors say, but I use what I have to patrol the shores of Shadow Lake, warning hikers and campers to stay away from the water, especially when they hear singing. Some nights when I can't sleep, I sit by my window and look out toward the lake. Sometimes I swear I can see small figures playing on the surface under the moonlight. They're still waiting for new friends to join their eternal games, but they'll have to wait a little longer. Because of Billy's love and courage, they didn't get either of us that day. I know they'll be waiting for me when my time comes, though. I hear them in my dreams, calling my name. The children of Shadow Lake are patient. They've been waiting for centuries. They can wait a little longer. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a ranger at Coconino National Forest in Arizona, and what I'm about to tell you happened back in 1974. Some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat thinking about it. Some things just can't be explained, and maybe they shouldn't be. It was early morning when I drove my truck down the dirt road into Copper Canyon. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky was turning pink, making the red rock canyon walls glow like they were on fire. I've always loved this time of day out here, when the desert feels alive and peaceful at the same time. I was checking on some reports about illegal camping in the backcountry. Not a big deal usually, just folks who didn't get the right permits, or were camping in off-limits areas. I'd been a ranger for almost 6 years by then, and at 38, I knew these canyons better than the back of my hand. The road ended, and I got out to continue on foot. A little spring bubbled up from somewhere in the rocks nearby, feeding a small group of cottonwood and willow trees. It was like a tiny heaven in all this dry land. Birds usually loved it here, and you could always hear them singing, but not today. I noticed it right away. The silence, not just quiet, but a heavy, wrong kind of silence. No birds calling, no insects buzzing. Even the spring seemed to stop bubbling. The wind that always moves through these canyons just stopped. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. In all my years out here, I'd never felt anything like it. That's when I saw the first strange thing. Perfect circles burned into the sand. Not like someone had built a campfire, but perfect circles, like something hot had been pressed down from above. They made a pattern that reminded me of the old symbols my grandmother used to draw when she told her stories. I knelt down to touch one of the marks. The sand wasn't warm, but it was fused together like glass. I tried the radio in my truck too. Call it in, but instead of the usual static or my colleague's voice, all I got was this awful howling sound. It was almost like a human voice trying to talk, but all wrong somehow. I switched it off fast. Then the air around me went crazy. One minute I was sweating in the Arizona heat. The next I was shivering as the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Then back to burning hot again. I looked at my shadow on the ground and froze. It wasn't moving with me. I raised my hand, but the shadow didn't. Instead, it seemed to stretch and twist like it had a mind of its own. All around me, the shadows were doing the same, writhing and pulsing like they were alive. I backed up against the canyon wall, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when I noticed the ancient petroglyphs carved into the rock behind me. I'd seen them 100 times before, drawings made by the Anasazi people, hundreds of years ago, but now they were glowing with a faint blue-green light, even though the sun was starting to rise. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head, warning me about old dangers that lived in these canyons, things that hunted in packs, things that wore the skins of wolves but walked like men. I didn't believe those stories then. I wish to God I still didn't. I should tell you a bit about myself. My mum was Apache, and my dad was Irish. Growing up, I never felt like I fully belonged in either world. The other Apache kids would sometimes tease me about my lighter skin, while the white kids in town never let me forget I was half Indian. My grandmother was the one who kept me connected to the Apache side of my heritage. She taught me the old ways, how to track animals, which plants could heal and which could harm, and the stories of our people. When I was little, I loved those stories. As I got older, I started to think they were just that, stories. After high school, I joined the army, ended up in Vietnam. I don't talk much about what happened there. Some memories are best left buried, though they have a way of crawling back up at night when I'm trying to sleep. I still wake up sometimes, thinking I'm back in that jungle, hearing the sounds of gunfire and my buddies screaming. That's partly why I took this job as a ranger. Out here in the desert, there's space and quiet. Most days, anyway. The canyons don't judge you for jumping at sudden noises or needing to sit with your back to a wall. The desert just is what it is, and it lets you be what you are. I run my fingers over the wolf tattoo on my left forearm. It covers up some ugly scars from the war, but it's also a reminder of who I am. My grandmother gave me my Apache name when I was 13, he who runs with wolves. Seems like a lifetime ago now. In my shirt pocket, I carry the small medicine bundle she gave me before she died, 3 years ago. It's wrapped in deerskin and contains sage, cedar, a small carved stone, wolf, and other things she said would protect me. Her last words to me were a warning about the skin changers that hunt in these canyons. I nodded and held her hand, thinking it was just the morphine talking. I've got a daughter, Luna. She's 16 now and lives with her mum in Phoenix. We divorced when Luna was 8. The nightmares and the drinking got to be too much back then. I'm sober now, and I send most of my paycheck for Luna's college fund. She comes to visit during summer breaks, and I'm teaching her how to read tracks and survive in the wilderness. Speaking of tracks, that's one thing I'm good at. I can look at footprints, animal scat, broken twigs, or bent grass, and tell you who or what passed by, how big they were, how fast they were moving, and how long ago. It's like reading a story written on the ground. Lately though, my dreams have been strange. I keep seeing wolves walking on 2 legs, speaking with human voices. They call out names of people I know, with tongues that split at the end like snakes. I wake up sweating every time. When I got the call about campers reporting devil dogs in this area, something cold settled in my stomach. The description they gave animals that seemed to walk like men and hunt together in organized packs. It was too close to my grandmother's stories, too close to my dreams. I shook off the chill and focused on the task at hand. These were probably just coyotes or actual wolves that had wandered down from the north. Nothing supernatural about it. The campers were just scared city folks who'd never spent a night in the wild before. But standing there in the unnatural silence of the canyon, with shadows moving on their own and ancient carvings glowing on the rocks, I wasn't so sure anymore. Something was wrong here, very wrong. And I had a sinking feeling I was about to find out exactly what my grandmother had been warning me about. I forced myself to move forward, following the trail that would lead to the campsite where the scared hikers had reported seeing those devil dogs. Every step felt heavy, like my boots were filled with wet sand. As I rounded a bend in the canyon, I stopped dead in my tracks. The campsite was a mess, but not in a normal way. Not like bears or coyotes had gotten into someone's food. This was deliberate. A shredded tent was spread out in a perfect circle. Sleeping bags had been torn into strips and arranged in a star pattern. Backpacks were emptied, with their contents sorted into neat piles. Food in one, clothes in another, personal items in a third. It looked like someone had carefully organized everything after ripping it apart. No camper would do this. No animal either. I knelt down to examine some tracks in the soft dirt. They started as regular wolf or coyote prints, four-legged, with claw marks visible butts. Then, in mid-trail they changed. The back paws disappeared, and the front paws became different, wider, more like hands than paws, like something had started walking on two legs instead of four. My mouth went dry. I'd tracked every animal in these canyons, and nothing makes tracks like these. Nearby, I found a dead jackrabbit. Its body had been opened with surgical precision, not torn or chewed like a predator would do. Organs had been removed and placed in a specific order beside the body. There was no blood anywhere, like it had been completely drained. The bones had been carefully arranged into a pattern I recognized from my grandmother's stories. A warning. Sin. The smell hit me then, a heavy musk like wet dog, mixed with something metallic and wrong. It was so strong it made my eyes water and my stomach turn. I spotted a campfire pit that still had smoke rising from it, even though the campers had been gone for at least a day according to their report. The ashes were arranged in symbols that made my skin crawl. Someone had drawn them with a finger, a human finger, but the prints around the fire pit were not human. I pulled out my compass to get my bearings, but the needle just spun wildly, never settling on north. My GPS showed impossible coordinates, claiming I was somehow in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. When I tried to start my truck, the engine made a grinding noise I'd never heard before, like metal scraping against bone. That's when I heard it howling in the distance, but not normal wolf howls. These sounds had a rhythm to them, almost like singing, like human voices chanting, but with a growling undertone that no human throat could make. I moved cautiously toward another disturbed area and immediately wished I hadn't. Fresh human waste containing undigested pieces of camping gear, tent stakes, zipper pulls, plastic buckles. Something had eaten parts of the campers' equipment, and then I didn't want to think about what might have happened to the campers themselves. As I tried to find my way back to the main trail, nothing looked familiar anymore. The canyon walls seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. Paths I knew should be there ended in solid rock walls. Trails I'd walked 100 times now led to drop-offs that had never been there before. My breath caught in my throat as the temperature suddenly plunged. In seconds, it dropped from about 80 degrees to what felt like 40. I could see my breath clouding in front of me. Frost formed on the desert plants around me, plants that had evolved to survive in heat, not cold. Something was hunting me, playing with me, and I was running out of options. I reached into my shirt and gripped my grandmother's medicine bundle, whispering the protection prayers she had taught me. For the first time since I was a child, I prayed those words and meant them, because I was starting to believe, and I was starting to understand why she had been so afraid. I backed away from the disturbed campsite, my hands still clutching the medicine bundle. The sun was high overhead now, but it felt like twilight in the canyon. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't have been able to reach. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a tall man standing on a ridge above me. Then it moved, and I realized no man could move like that. Fluid, but wrong, like its joints bent in ways they shouldn't. It stepped into a patch of sunlight, and I couldn't breathe. It stood on two legs, but everything else about it was wolf, except wolves aren't 8 feet tall. Its body was covered in thick, dark fur. Its hands, because they were hands, not paws, had long fingers ending in black claws, but its face was the worst part. Somewhere between wolf and human, with a long snout full of teeth, and yellow eyes that looked at me with an intelligence no animal should have. Those eyes held me frozen in place. They weren't just animal eyes. They knew things. They recognized me. The creature tilted its head and made a sound, a clicking noise with its teeth that echoed off the canyon walls. In response, more shapes emerged from caves and crevices I hadn't even noticed. 7 of them, moving together with perfect coordination. They weren't fully wolf or fully human, but something in between. Some walking upright, others loping on all fours. all wearing scraps of torn clothing that I realized with horror must have belonged to the missing campers. Somehow, without them making a sound, I could feel them communicating with each other. It was like pressure in my head, thoughts that weren't mine, pushing at the edges of my mind. The big one, the Alpha, took a step toward me. It moved so fast I barely saw it happen. 1 second it was 30 feet away, the next it was close, enough that I could smell its breath, like rotten meat and something metallic. "Jake Running Wolf," it said. It spoke my Apache name, the name only my grandmother had used. But it wasn't speaking out loud. The words were inside my head, and they sounded like my grandmother's voice, but twisted and wrong. "She sent us for you," it continued, still in her voice. "You turned your back on the old ways, on your people." I knew it was lying. My grandmother would never send these ... things, but hearing her voice coming from this creature made my knees weak. The pack moved around me in a circle, sometimes seeming to disappear into solid rock, only to emerge somewhere else. One moment they were clearly visible, the next they seemed to fade like smoke. My eyes couldn't track them properly. One of them held up something that caught the sunlight, a silver watch I recognized. It had belonged to one of the campers who'd made the report. Next to it, stretched on a crude frame made of sticks, was what looked horribly like human skin. I'd been in combat, I'd seen terrible things in Vietnam, but nothing like this. I pulled my knife, a poor weapon against creatures like these, but it was all I had. The Alpha made a sound that might have been laughter. "We have been waiting for one of your blood," it said in my head. "The last shaman's grandson. We have a quarrel with your family that goes back many winters." It knew who I was. It knew my grandmother had been a shaman, and somehow it had a grudge against my family. I tried to back away, looking for any escape route. But every time I moved toward what looked like an opening, one of the pack would appear there, blocking my path. They were hurting me, I realized, driving me deeper into the canyon system. "Your grandmother couldn't protect herself," the Alpha said. "What makes you think you can?" That's when I knew for certain my grandmother hadn't died from cancer as the doctors claimed. These things had gotten to her somehow, and now they were coming for me. I turned and ran, though a part of me knew that's exactly what they wanted. I could hear them behind me, not chasing exactly, but keeping pace, driving me exactly where they wanted me to go, deeper into the canyon, toward something I couldn't see yet, but could feel waiting for me. They could have caught me at any time. They were playing with me, like cats with a mouse, and like that mouse, I was running out of places to hide. I ran until my lungs burned. The canyon narrowed, then opened into a circular area surrounded by high walls. Ancient stone steps were carved into the rock, leading up to small caves dotting the cliffs. At the center stood weather-worn stone pillars arranged in a circle. With a sickening feeling, I realized where I was. My grandmother had brought me here once, when I was very young. This was a sacred Apache burial ground, a place where, according to her stories, our ancestors had fought and defeated evil spirits long ago. The pack of skinwalkers flowed into the space behind me, blocking any retreat. They moved differently now, more certain, more eager. This was where they had been driving me all along. The Alpha stepped forward. Its form seemed to shimmer and shift, becoming more human-like, though still horribly wrong. "Do you know what we are, son of Running Deer Woman?" it asked, using my grandmother's Apache name. I didn't answer, but it continued anyway. "We were warriors once. Apache, like your grandmother, like you." Its yellow eyes gleamed. "We fought for our people against the white soldiers. But when food grew scarce and children starved, we made a choice." A chill ran down my spine as I began to understand. "You betrayed the tribe," I said. "You helped the soldiers find the hidden camps." The Alpha's mouth stretched in what might have been a smile, showing too many teeth. "We were promised power, and we received it." It gestured at its inhuman form, but there was a price, always a price. "The tribe's shaman cursed you," I whispered, remembering my grandmother's stories I had thought were just meant to scare children into behaving. "Your great-great-grandfather," the Alpha snarled. "He bound us to these canyons, made us what we are, and only the blood of his line can set us free." It looked at me with hungry eyes. "Or join us." It stepped closer. "The choice is yours, Jake Running Wolf. Become one of the pack, hunt with us, or be our prey." For a moment, I felt a pull toward its offer. Power, freedom from fear, belonging to something ancient and strong. Then a flash of memory hit me, the torn campsite, the missing hikers, the watch belonging to someone who would never go home to their family, and my grandmother, dying in a hospital bed, still trying to warn me with her last breath. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. The Alpha's face twisted in rage. It threw back its head and howled a signal to the others. The hunt was on. They came at me from all sides. I dodged and ran, heart pounding. The way they moved, the sounds they made, it triggered something in me. Suddenly, I wasn't in Arizona anymore. I was back in Vietnam, surrounded by enemies in the jungle, my squad being picked off one by one. Panic rose in my throat. My hands shook. Not now. I couldn't afford a flashback now. I fumbled for my grandmother's medicine bundle, nearly dropping it. The small deerskin pouch felt warm in my hand. I ripped it open and took out the dried sage and cedar. Without thinking, I began reciting the prayers she had taught me, my voice shaking at first, then growing stronger. One of the lunged at me. I ducked and rolled, coming up with sage crushed in my palm. Acting on instinct, I blew the crushed herbs toward it while speaking the ancient words. The creature shrieked and backed away as if burned. It worked. The old protections still had power. I ran again, this time with purpose. I remembered another of my grandmother's teachings. Skinwalkers couldn't cross running water that had been blessed by ceremony, and I knew there was a spring nearby, the source of the one I'd seen earlier. I found it a small pool where water bubbled up from underground, forming a stream that cut through the canyon floor. I splashed into it and quickly performed the blessing ritual my grandmother had shown me, all while the pack circled just beyond the water's edge, snarling in frustration. The water gave me a moment to think, to plan. I couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, the stream would end or they would find another way to reach me. I closed my eyes and did something I hadn't done since I was a boy. I called out to my ancestors, to my grandmother's spirit, asking for guidance, for strength. A warmth spread through me, and suddenly I knew what I had to do. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a small black knife. My grandmother had given it to me years ago, a blade made of obsidian, a volcanic glass sacred to our people. "Come face me, if you're brave enough," I called to the Alpha. "One-on-one, no pack, just you and me." The Alpha snarled, but I could see the hunger in its eyes. Pride. It wanted to prove it could defeat me alone. It leaped across the narrow part of the stream, landing on my side. The other skinwalkers stayed back, watching. We circled each other on a narrow ledge above a steep drop. One wrong move would mean falling to the rocks below. The Alpha was faster, stronger, but I had the knife, and I had my grandmother's spirit with me. It lunged, claws slashing. I ducked under its arm and drove the obsidian blade up into its chest, speaking the final words of my grandmother's prayer. The Alpha's eyes widened in shock. It stumbled back, black blood oozing from the wound. Not falling, but weakening. It looked at me with hatred, then at its pack with something like fear. A tremor ran through its body. The other skinwalkers began to howl, not in triumph, but in terror. They turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows of the canyon, their howls fading into the distance. The Alpha looked back at me one last time. "This isn't over," it growled, its voice fading like a bad radio signal. "We will return, and next time, you won't have your grandmother's protection." Then it too was gone, leaving me alone with the obsidian knife, now stained black. I made my way back to my truck, which started perfectly on the first try. As I drove out of the canyon, I noticed things returning to normal. Birds singing, insects buzzing, the natural rhythm of the desert restored. But I was changed. In the days that followed, I noticed animals shying away from me. I began having visions, seeing things before they happened, understanding things I shouldn't have known. My grandmother had been the tribe's last shaman. Now, I realized that responsibility had passed to me. I still work as a ranger, but my real job is protecting people from dangers they don't believe in. I've turned one of the rooms in my cabin into a place for making medicines and studying the old ways. Luna thinks I'm just getting more into my native roots, but it's more than that. Sometimes at night, I still hear them howling in the distance, waiting, watching, and I'll be ready when they return.